Sometimes inheritance comes when you need it most, and sometimes it comes with secrets you're not sure you want to uncover. Claire Donovan is 54 years old when a letter finds her at the Cascade Valley Women's Shelter in Bend, Oregon. She's been homeless for 8 months, sleeping in her car until it was repossessed, then rotating between shelters and the occasional motel room when she can scrape together enough from day labor jobs. The envelope is cream-colored, expensive paper, addressed to her in careful script. Inside, a law firm in Prineville informs her that her great-uncle Theodore Hartwell has passed away at 96, and she is the sole heir to his property. The property is a trading post, built in 1873, sealed and untouched for 40 years, located 14 miles up a mountain access road that barely qualifies as drivable, then another 2 miles on foot. Claire reads the letter 3 times in the shelter's common room, her German Shepherd mix, Ranger, lying at her feet. The other women glance at her with a mixture of curiosity and the careful non-involvement that shelter life teaches. She hasn't told anyone about the letter, hasn't decided yet if it's real or some kind of scam. Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story is touching you already, make sure you're subscribed. I've got something extra special saved for tomorrow. Claire doesn't remember Uncle Theo well. A tall man with a weathered face who visited once when she was maybe 7 or 8, bringing her a carved wooden horse. Her mother had been tense during that visit, eager for him to leave. After he went back to his mountain, her mother never spoke to him again. Claire had forgotten he existed until this letter arrived, pulling him from the shadows of childhood memory into sudden, urgent relevance. The attorney, a woman named Patricia Vance, includes a phone number. Claire borrows a phone from the shelter coordinator and makes the call from the parking lot. Ranger pressed against her leg. The dog has been her constant companion since she found him abandoned outside a grocery store 6 months ago. He was starving, matted, scared. She was barely surviving herself. But she'd shared her sandwich with him, and he'd followed her back to her car. They'd been inseparable since. Miss Donovan. Patricia Vance's voice is professional but not unkind. Thank you for calling. I know this must come as a surprise. I didn't know he was still alive. Claire says honestly, I barely remember him. He lived alone for most of his adult life. Very private. He left specific instructions that the property pass to you upon his death. There's no mortgage. Taxes are paid through next year and... She pauses. He was quite insistent that you come see it yourself before making any decisions about selling. What kind of trading post? Claire asks. Frontier era. Your great-uncle's grandfather built it during the settlement period. It served miners, trappers, Native American traders. It's been in your family for over 150 years. Mr. Hartwell sealed it in 1984 and never opened it again. He lived in a small cabin nearby but left the main building untouched. Claire's mind struggles to process this. She owns something. After 8 months of owning nothing but the clothes on her back and a dog who technically isn't even licensed to her, she owns a building, land, history. Why did he seal it? He never said. But Miss Donovan, I should warn you, the building is in rough condition. It's been closed for 40 years. The roof may be compromised. There's no electricity or running water. It's extremely remote. Several interested buyers have already contacted my office offering to purchase the property site unseen, if you prefer to. No, Claire interrupts. I want to see it. That decision surprises her, as much as it seems to surprise the attorney. But something in her chest has loosened at the thought of a place that belongs to her, a place no one can evict her from. Patricia Vance gives her directions and arranges to meet her there in 3 days. Claire hangs up and looks down at Ranger, whose amber eyes watch her with the patient intelligence that has kept her sane these past months. We're going to the mountains, she tells him. We're going to see what Uncle Theo left us. The drive takes 2 days because Claire has to hitchhike. She leaves most of her belongings in a storage locker at the shelter. The few clothes, the sleeping bag, the water-stained paperback books she's collected. She keeps only a backpack with essentials. Spare clothes, her toothbrush, the envelope from the attorney, and dog food for Ranger. A trucker gives them a ride as far as Redmond. A retired couple heading to their cabin takes them the rest of the way to Prineville. The town is small, nestled in high desert country, where ponderosa pines give way to juniper and sage. The attorney's office is in a converted house on the main street. Patricia Vance is in her 60s, gray-haired and efficient, wearing practical outdoor clothing rather than a business suit. "I'm glad you came," she says, shaking Claire's hand. "I wasn't sure you would." "Why not?" "Because most people in your situation would have taken the cash offer. $20,000 for the land and building, no inspection needed. Some developers want it for the location. Apparently the springs nearby have mineral value. $20,000. Claire's breath catches. That's a fortune to her right now. That's first and last month's rent, a security deposit, a used car, time to find real work instead of day labor. "But Uncle Theo wanted me to see it first," Claire says slowly. "He did. He was very specific about that." Patricia pulls out a folder. "He left you a letter as well. I was instructed to give it to you before you visited the property." The letter is in the same envelope style as the one from the attorney, but this time the handwriting is shakier, older. Claire opens it carefully. "Claire, you won't remember me well. I only met you once, when you were very small. Your mother and I didn't get along. Old family grievances that don't matter now. But I followed your life from a distance. I know about your nursing career. I know about your husband's death 3 years ago. I know about the medical bills that destroyed you financially. I know you've been struggling. I'm not leaving you the trading post out of pity. I'm leaving it because you're the only family I have left, and because what's hidden there needs to find someone who'll understand its importance. Someone who won't just sell it to the highest bidder without looking deeper. The trading post holds secrets, Claire. My grandfather's secrets, and secrets from before his time. I sealed it 40 years ago because I didn't know what to do with what I'd found. I was a coward. I chose silence over courage. I'm asking you to be braver than I was. Inside the main building, in the floor beneath the counter, there's a cache. My grandfather hid it during his lifetime. I discovered it in 1984 and immediately sealed the building because I was afraid. Afraid of what the contents meant. Afraid of the people who might come looking. Afraid of responsibility. I've lived with that fear for 40 years. Don't make my mistake. The key to understanding everything is in the cache, but you'll need to look carefully. Some secrets are hidden in plain sight. Your great-uncle, Theodore. Claire reads the letter twice, her hands shaking slightly. Patricia watches her with a carefully neutral expression. Do you know what he's referring to? Claire asks. No, he never discussed the contents of the building with me, only that it should pass to you and that you should see it before making any decisions. Did he seem... Claire struggles for the word. Paranoid? Delusional? Sharp as a tack until the end. Patricia says firmly, whatever he's referring to, he believed it was real and significant. They leave Prineville in Patricia's Subaru, Ranger in the back seat with his head out the window. The paved road gives way to gravel after 10 miles, then to dirt. The landscape rises steadily, ponderosa pines thickening around them, the air growing cooler and scented with resin and earth. This area was prime trading territory in the 1870s. Patricia explains as they drive. The trading post sat at crossroads, miners heading to the eastern Oregon gold fields, trappers working the mountain streams, Native American tribes moving between summer and winter grounds. Your great-great-grandfather, Jackson Hartwell, built the post and ran it for 30 years. He was known as honest but shrewd. What happened to him? Died in 1903. Left the business to his son, your great-grandfather. The family ran it until the 1920s when the railroad came through and changed trade routes. After that, it was mostly storage, occasional use as a hunting cabin. Theodore's father lived there until he died in the 50s. Then Theodore took it over. He lived in a small cabin nearby and used the trading post as, well, I'm not entirely sure what he used it for. He was very private. The road becomes almost impassable. Deep ruts, washouts from spring runoff, branches scraping the sides of Subaru. Patricia navigates carefully, her jaw set with concentration. After 40 minutes of bone-rattling driving, they reach a small clearing where a weathered cabin sits. Its roof mostly intact, but its windows dark and empty. That's where Theodore lived, Patricia says. The trading post is about 2 miles further, but we can't drive. The road's completely washed out. We'll need to hike. Claire shoulders her backpack and clips Ranger's leash to his collar, though she knows he won't wander. They follow what remains of the old road, now mostly reclaimed by forest. The ponderosa pines here are massive, centuries old, their bark deep orange in the afternoon light. The forest floor is carpeted with needles and pine cones, and Claire can hear the distant rush of water, the springs Patricia mentioned. Ranger walks ahead, nose to the ground, his tail carried high in a way that means he's alert and engaged rather than worried. Claire watches him carefully. In the months they've been together, she's learned to read his body language as clearly as words. He's her early warning system, her comfort, her companion. More than once his low growl has warned her away from dangerous situations in the darker corners of the city. There, Patricia says, pointing ahead. The trading post emerges from a forest like something from another time. It's a 2-story log structure, substantial and solid despite decades of neglect. The lower floor is massive, probably 40 feet long and 30 wide, built from logs so thick it would take 3 men to circle them with their arms. The upper story is smaller, just the front half of the building, creating a covered porch on the lower level. The roof is cedar shake, mossy and sagging in places, but mostly intact. Windows are shuttered from the inside, making the building look blind and secretive. A rusted chain hangs across the front door, secure with padlock, so old it's more rust than metal. Patricia produces a key from her jacket pocket. Theodore gave this to me 6 months ago, when he knew he was dying. Said to keep it safe until you came. The padlock resists, then finally releases with a grinding protest. The chain drops heavily. Patricia pushes the door, which opens inward with a long, protesting creak that echoes in the forest quiet. The smell hits him first. Old wood and dust, mouse nests and decay, but underneath something else. Leather, old paper, the mineral scent of stone. Claire steps inside, Patricia following. Ranger presses close to her leg, his ears pricked forward. The interior is dark, lit only by the weak light from the open door. As her eyes adjust, Claire begins to make out details. The main floor is a single large room. A long counter runs along the back wall. Its surface still scattered with objects, an old scale, a ledger, tin cups. Shelves line the walls, floor to ceiling, still stocked with goods. Blankets folded and moth-eaten, tin cans with faded labels, coils of rope, iron tools rust-frozen in their positions. It's like walking into a museum exhibit, except everything is real, untouched, preserved by 40 years of darkness and dry mountain air. My God, Patricia breathes. It's all still here. Everything. Claire moves deeper into space, her boots leaving prints in the thick dust. She can see where mice have built nests in corners, where water has leaked through the roof in spots, but the structural elements seem sound. The log walls are solid. The floor, though dusty and scattered with debris, doesn't give under her weight. Ranger suddenly pulls forward on his leash, moving toward the back of the room. He stops at the counter, nose to the floor, tail rigid. Then he begins to dig. Ranger, no. Claire starts to say, but he's not listening. He's pawing at the floorboard with intense focus, whining low in his throat. Wait, Patricia says. Your uncle's letter mentioned something under the counter. Claire kneels beside Ranger, running her hands over floorboards. They're wide planks, hand-hewn, fitted tight. But when she presses on one, it moves slightly. She presses harder and hears a click. A section of floor, maybe 3 feet square, lifts up, revealing a space beneath. A cache, just like Uncle Theo said. Patricia pulls a flashlight from her pocket and shines it into the opening. The beam illuminates a metal box, approximately 2 feet by 3 feet, sitting in a carefully constructed hollow beneath the floor. The box is locked with a combination mechanism, the kind used in the late 1800s. Claire lifts the box out carefully. It's heavy, substantial. Rust has claimed parts of the metal surface, but the lock mechanism seems intact. She sets it on the counter, dust pluming around it. Do you know the combination? Patricia asks. Claire examines the lock. For numbered wheels, each going from 0 to 9. She tries obvious combinations. 1873, the year the trading post was built. Nothing. 1984, the year Theodore sealed it. Nothing. Her birthday, his birthday, every date she can think of. Nothing works. She sits back, frustrated. Ranger presses against her, then suddenly moves to a shelf behind the counter. He noses at something and pulls it down, a leather-bound ledger, small and water-stained. Claire takes it from him, opens it carefully. The pages are brittle, the ink faded but readable. It's a journal, written in precise handwriting. Jackson Hartwell, spring 1879. Her great-great-grandfather's journal. She flips through carefully, looking for anything that might be a combination. Then she finds an entry dated June 14th, 1879. The cash is secure. Only those who understand the true value of what we protect will open it. The code is a promise, 1-8-6-8. Claire tries it on the combination lock. The mechanism resists, stiff with age, but then with a click that sounds like a gunshot in the quiet room, it releases. Claire lifts the lid. Inside, wrapped in oil canvas, are documents. Dozens of them. She lifts the first bundle carefully, unwraps it. Maps, old survey maps, and beneath them, legal documents. Deeds, claims, letters. Patricia leans in, her breath catching. She lifts one of the documents, holds it to the light filtering through the door. "Claire," she says, her voice strange. "Do you know what this is?" Claire shakes her head. This is a Spanish land grant, dated 1802, granting 200,000 acres in what's now eastern Oregon to... She squints at the faded text. To the Ortega family. She sets that document aside, pulls out another. This is a treaty between the Warm Springs tribes and... She reads carefully, and representatives of the United States government, dated 1855. But it's not the Treaty of 1855 that's in the public record. This is different. The boundaries are different. Document after document, each one potentially explosive. Spanish land grants that were never honored. Treaties that contradict the official record. Mining claims that predate the supposedly first claims in the region. Letters between government officials discussing deliberate fraud and land theft. And at the very bottom, wrapped separately in silk that has somehow survived the decades intact, a single document that makes Patricia go absolutely still. "Claire," she whispers, This is a certificate of deposit from the Bank of California, dated 1871. She hands it to Claire with shaking hands. Claire reads it slowly, struggling with the ornate script and faded ink. Certificate of deposit, bearer instrument, redeemable for gold bullion in the amount of $3 million. Bank of California, San Francisco. Issued to Jackson Hartwell, April 15, 1871. $3 million. In 1871. In gold. That's not possible, Claire breathes. Bearer instruments were common in that era. Patricia says, her attorney's mind working through the implications. Anyone who possessed a certificate could redeem it. No questions asked. That's why Jackson hid it. If someone stole it, they'd own $3 million in gold. But what's it worth now? Claire asks. The bank probably closed. The gold was probably claimed by someone else. This is just a piece of paper. Patricia is already pulling out her phone, though there's no signal this deep in the mountains. The Bank of California still exists. It's part of Union Bank now. And bearer instruments. Claire, if this was never redeemed, if there's any chance it's still valid. She does quick math on a notepad she pulls from her pocket. $3 million in 1871 gold, adjusted for inflation and gold price increases. This could be worth over $150 million today. Maybe more. The number is so large it doesn't feel real. Claire sits down heavily on the dusty floor, Ranger immediately pressing against her. She's been sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, worrying about where her next meal would come from. And her great-great-grandfather hid $150 million in gold beneath the floorboards of a trading post. Why? She finally asks. Why would he hide this? Why not redeem it? Patricia is paging through the other documents, piecing together the story. Look at these letters. Jackson was working with someone, looks like a tribal leader named Three Rivers and a Mexican landowner named Ortega. They were trying to document fraudulent land sales, treaty violations, theft of resources. She holds up one letter, dated 1878. Jackson was trying to protect these people. He was using his trading post as a neutral space, a place where different groups could meet and plan. And the certificate, she gestures to it. This was probably payment or funding for their efforts, maybe from sympathizers in San Francisco. But something went wrong. Another letter, dated 1880, is in Jackson's handwriting but barely legible, written in obvious haste. They know. Federal marshals came asking questions. Had to send Three Rivers and Ortega away. Cash everything. If they find the documents, they'll destroy them. If they find the certificate, they'll claim I stole it. The truth must wait for someone braver than I am. So he hid it all, Claire says slowly, and passed it down. Family secret. Until Theodore found it in 1984 and sealed the building because he was afraid. And now it's yours, Patricia says. All of it. The documents proving fraud and treaty violations. The land grants that could upend property ownership across thousands of acres. And a certificate potentially worth $150 million. She looks at Claire seriously. You need to understand something. The moment word gets out about what's in this cash, you're going to have problems. Government agencies will want to suppress documents that embarrass them. Property developers will try to invalidate land claims. Someone might argue the certificate was illegally obtained and try to seize it. You're holding evidence of crimes committed by the federal government, by banks, by land speculators. People die protecting these documents. Claire says quietly, thinking of the urgency in Jackson's letter. Three Rivers, Ortega, whoever else was involved. They risked everything. They did. And your great-great-grandfather and great-uncle both chose to hide rather than act. But you don't have to make that choice. Claire looks around the trading post, at the shelves still stocked with goods from another century, at the counter where her ancestor conducted honest business, while hiding revolutionary secrets underneath. She thinks about Uncle Theo, living alone on this mountain for decades, carrying the weight of knowledge he was too afraid to use. She thinks about Ranger, who found the cash when she wouldn't have known where to look, about the months of homelessness, the shame and fear and constant vulnerability, about having nothing and suddenly being handed everything. I need time, she says. I need to understand what all of this means before I decide anything. Patricia nods. The property is yours. Legally, everything in it is yours. I'll file the documents transferring ownership. You can stay here, secure the building, figure out your next move. But Claire... She pauses, choosing words carefully. Be careful. Once I file those transfer papers, it becomes public record that you own this property. People who've been interested in buying it will know your name. And if anyone suspects what's hidden here, I'll be careful, Claire promises, after Patricia leaves, promising to return in a few days to check on her. Claire sits in the dusty trading post as afternoon fades to evening. She rewraps the documents carefully, places them back in the metal box, and hides the box under the floorboards again. She explores the building more thoroughly. The upper floor is a single room, probably living quarters for her great-great-grandfather. There's a bed frame with a rotted mattress, a small stove, a trunk full of clothes so old they disintegrate when she touches them. But the structure is sound. With work, this place could be habitable. As darkness falls, Claire builds a small fire in the old stove, using wood from the pile she finds under the covered porch. Ranger settles beside her, his head on her lap. Through the open door, she can see stars emerging in the darkening sky. More stars than she's seen in years. She owns this building, this land, these secrets. After 8 months of owning nothing, she owns something that could change her life. But more than that, she owns responsibility. Jackson Hartwell hid these documents for a reason. Three Rivers and Ortega risked their lives for a reason. Uncle Theo sealed this building for a reason. And that $150 million certificate, that's not just money, that's justice delayed. That's restitution for stolen land and broken treaties. That's evidence that powerful people committed crimes and got away with it. "What do I do?" she whispers to Ranger, who looks at her with those knowing amber eyes. The dog doesn't answer. But outside, the wind moves to the ponderosa pines, and for the first time in 8 months, Claire Donovan feels something other than fear and exhaustion. She feels purpose. Claire wakes to Ranger's low growl. Dawn light filters through cracks in the shutter windows, painting thin lines across the dusty floor. She sits up quickly from where she'd been sleeping on the bare floor, using her backpack as a pillow. Ranger's at the door, his body tense, ears pricked forward. Not the aggressive stance he takes when there's immediate danger, but the alert posture that means someone is approaching. Claire moves to the window, peering through a gap in the shutters. A truck is parked where Patricia's Subaru had been yesterday, a newer model pickup, expensive looking. A man in his 50s climbs out, followed by a younger man, maybe 30, carrying what looks like surveying equipment. They walk directly toward the trading post, as if they know exactly where they're going. Claire's first instinct is to hide the metal box, but it's already concealed under the floorboards. Instead, she steps out onto the porch, Ranger at her side. The dog's growl intensifies, but she rests her hand on his head. "Easy." The older man stops about 10 feet away, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. He's well-dressed in outdoor gear that looks catalog new, his hair silver and carefully styled. Everything about him suggests money and authority. "Miss Donovan? I'm Robert Vance, Patricia Vance's brother." Claire's stomach tightens. "She told you about the property. She mentioned she'd met with you yesterday. I'm a land developer. My firm has been interested in this property for years. We've made several offers to Theodore Hartwell over the decades." He smiles, the expression practiced and professionally warm. "I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer. $60,000. Cash. You can sign the papers today and walk away with a check." 60,000. Triple what Patricia mentioned yesterday. Claire's mind immediately calculates. That's a year of rent, a used car, stability, time to rebuild her life. "Why?" she asks. "What's so valuable about an abandoned trading post?" "The land itself," Robert says smoothly. "The mineral springs on the property have potential for development. High-end spa resort, healing retreats. The location is perfect, remote but accessible. The trading post building has historical value, of course. We preserve it as a centerpiece of the resort." It sounds reasonable, but Claire thinks about Uncle Theo's letter. "I'm not leaving you the trading post out of pity. I'm leaving it because what's hidden there needs someone who'll understand its importance. I need time to think about it," she says. Robert's smile tightens fractionally. "I understand, but Miss Donovan, I should be honest with you. This property requires significant investment to become viable. The access road needs repair. The building needs structural assessment. The water rights are complicated. For someone in your situation, the burden of ownership might be more trouble than it's worth." The words are polite, but the meaning is clear. You're homeless. You can't afford this. Take the money and go. I said I need time to think about it. The younger man, who hasn't spoken yet, steps forward. "Mr. Vance is being generous, ma'am. Other firms would lowball you at 20, 25,000. 60 is more than fair for property in this condition. And yet you're offering it," Claire says, "which makes me wonder what you know that I don't." Robert's expression hardens slightly. "I'm offering fair market value based on development potential. Nothing more. But the offer expires in 48 hours. After that, we'll be pursuing other properties in the region." They leave without waiting for a response. Claire watches their truck navigate the rough road until it disappears into the trees. Ranger's growl finally subsides. "Good boy," Claire murmurs. "You didn't trust him either." She goes back inside, lifts the floorboard, and pulls out the metal box. In daylight, with fresh eyes, she examines the contents more carefully. The certificate of deposit is the most obviously valuable item, but the other documents, she spreads them across the counter, organizing them chronologically. The Spanish land grants date from 1802 to 1810. They're written in flowing script, bearing official seals. Claire doesn't read Spanish well, but she can make out place names. Rio Grande, Cascade Range, territories that are now part of Oregon and Washington. The treaties are more complex. She finds 3 different versions of what appears to be the same 1855 treaty with the Warm Springs Confederated Tribes. The official treaty, the one she vaguely remembers from history classes, relegated the tribes to a small reservation. But one of these alternate versions shows much larger boundaries, encompassing thousands of additional acres. Someone had changed the official record. The letters tell a story of fraud on a massive scale. Government surveyors working with land speculators to deliberately misrepresent boundaries. Mining companies filing fraudulent claims to territory that was legally protected. Tribal representatives being murdered or intimidated into signing revised treaties. And Jackson Hartwell had documented all of it. One letter, dated 1877, is particularly damning. It's from a federal surveyor named William Kensington to a business partner. The Warm Springs matter is handled. The revised treaty maps place them 40 miles east of the original boundaries. The intervening land is now available for claim. Hartwell knows, but he can't prove anything without the original documents, which we've destroyed. If he causes trouble, we'll discredit him as an Indian sympathizer and fraudster. No one will believe a traitor over federal officials. But they hadn't destroyed the original documents. Jackson had them. He'd hidden them for over 140 years, waiting for someone to be brave enough to expose the truth. Claire's hands shake as she reads. This isn't just historical curiosity. This is evidence of crimes that have never been prosecuted, land that was stolen and never returned, treaties that were violated and never honored. And if these documents became public, thousands of property deeds across Oregon could be invalidated, development projects could be halted, billions of dollars in land value could shift. No wonder Robert Vance wanted to buy the property before she looked too closely. Ranger suddenly barks, sharp and urgent. Claire freezes. The dog is at the back wall of the trading post, pawing at the floor near the shelves. What is it, boy? She kneels beside him. The floorboards here are different, slightly newer than the rest, as if they've been replaced at some point. She presses on them experimentally. One gives slightly. Another cash. This one is simpler, just a loose board that lifts to reveal a shallow space beneath. Inside is a leather journal, better preserved than the one she found yesterday. And beneath it, a small wooden box. Claire lifts out the journal first, opens it carefully. Theodore Hartwell, September 1984. Uncle Theo's journal. The one he kept when he found the original cash and sealed the building. She reads quickly, her heart pounding. September 15th, 1984. I found it today. Grandfather's cash. I knew it was under the counter from family stories, but I never believed it was real. Now I wish it weren't. The documents are explosive. Land fraud, treaty violations, murder. And that certificate. $3 million in gold from 1871. My hands shook so badly I could barely read it. I showed it to Mary. She was horrified. You can't reveal this, Theo, she said. Think about what would happen. Government investigations, legal battles. We'd be dragged into something we can't control. People could get hurt. She's right. I'm just a retired forest ranger. I'm not equipped for this. I'm not brave enough for this. The entries continue over several months, charting Theodore's internal struggle. He consulted with lawyers who warned him about the legal complexities. He spoke with historians who confirmed the document's authenticity, but urged caution about going public. Everyone he talked to reinforces fear. And then Claire finds the entry that explains why he sealed the building. March 3rd, 1985. Someone broke into my cabin last night. Didn't take anything, just toss the place. Warning, they know I found something. I got a phone call this morning. No identification. Man's voice professional, cold. Mr. Hartwell, we understand you've come into possession of certain historical documents. We'd like to discuss purchasing them from you. I said I didn't know what he was talking about. Let's not play games, he said. You found your grandfather's cash. We're prepared to offer you $100,000 for contents. Think carefully. The alternative is legal action. Those documents may have been obtained illegally. Possession of stolen government property is a federal crime. I hung up, then I sealed the trading post. Moved the cash to a second hiding place. If they come looking, they won't find it easily. I'm a coward. I know that, but I'm also realistic. I'm 55 years old. Mary's health is fragile. We have a quiet life. I can't risk destroying that for documents that might not even be actionable after all this time. I'll leave it to the next generation. Maybe someone braver than me will know what to do. The journal ends there. But the wooden box beneath it contains one more crucial piece of the puzzle. Claire opens it carefully. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, is a modern document dated 2023, just a year ago. It's a legal brief professionally prepared. Summary legal opinion re. Potential claims based on historical documents. Prepared for Theodore Hartwell by Morrison and Chun, attorneys at law. Claire reads through the dense legal language. The summary is clear. The documents in Jackson's cache could support multiple legal claims. Treaty violations that would require government response. Land claims that could be litigated. And the certificate of deposit. According to the lawyers, if it was validly issued and never redeemed, it represents a debt that Union Bank, successor to Bank of California, would still be obligated to honor. The estimated value, $150 to $175 million, depending on gold prices and legal fees. But the legal brief also warns of significant challenges. Any attempt to redeem the certificate or publicize these documents will trigger immediate legal opposition from multiple parties. Federal government treaty violations, state government land claims, current property owners' title disputes, and potentially the bank itself, attempting to argue the certificate is invalid. Clients should be prepared for lengthy litigation, possible criminal investigation, possession of allegedly stolen documents, and significant personal risk. Recommended approach. Secure documents. Consult with Native American legal advocacy groups. Consider donating materials to historical societies rather than pursuing personal financial gain. So Uncle Theo had known. In his final year, he consulted lawyers, understood what the cash represented, and still chose to pass it to Claire rather than act on it himself. Because he was dying, and he knew he didn't have time to fight the battles that would come. But Claire does. She sits back, her mind racing. The certificate alone could transform her life. $150 million. She'd never have to worry about money again. Never sleep in a shelter. Never stand in line at a food bank. But the other documents, they're not about her. They're about justice for people who were defrauded, murdered, displaced. They're about treaty obligations that were never honored. They're about land that was stolen and never returned. Ranger whines softly, pressing his nose against her hand. She strokes his head absently. What would you do, boy? The trading post settles around her with small creaks and groans, the old logs expanding in the warming morning air. Through the gaps in the shutters, she can see sunlight painting the ponderosa pines gold. This place, this building her great-great-grandfather built, where he conducted honest business while hiding revolutionary evidence, where he met with Three Rivers and Ortega and other people fighting for what was right, where he chose principle over profit, until he got scared, until the threats came and he hit everything. Just like Theodore got scared 40 years later and sealed the building. 2 generations of Hartwell men who knew the truth and chose silence. Claire stands abruptly. She's not going to be the third. She spends the rest of the morning securing the building. She finds old boards to reinforce the door, hammers and nails in storage shed behind the trading post. She moves the metal box with all the documents to a better hiding place, wrapped in waterproof material and buried under floorboards in the upstairs room where it's less likely to be found in a casual search. Then she walks back to Theodore's cabin, Ranger at her side. The cabin is small, but structurally sound. One room, a wood stove, a sleeping loft. No electricity, but there's a hand pump outside that, after some vigorous priming, produces clean water from a well. She can live here, at least temporarily. It's better than the shelter. She's hauling her few belongings from her backpack into the cabin when she hears another vehicle approaching. Her stomach tightens. Not Robert Vance again, but it's Patricia's Subaru. The attorney climbs out, looking worried. "Claire, I need to talk to you." My brother called me this morning. He was here, Claire says. Offer me $60,000. Patricia winces. I'm sorry. I mentioned the property transferred to him in passing. I didn't think he'd come up here without calling first. Did you accept? No. Good. Patricia looks relieved, because I did some research last night. Robert's firm has been trying to acquire properties in this area for years. They're not interested in spa resorts. They're interested in mineral rights. There's a deposit of rare earth elements, lithium, cobalt, in the mountains around here, worth hundreds of millions if they can get the extraction permits. And they need to own the land to get the permits. Exactly. Your property sits right in the middle of their target area. If you don't sell, they can't complete their land package. That's why $60,000 for property. They initially offered $24,000. They're desperate. Claire sits down on the cabin's porch step. There's more. I found another cache this morning. Uncle Theo's journal. Legal opinions. The documents are even more significant than we thought. And there's evidence that someone threatened Theodore when he found the cache in 1984. Tried to buy the documents from him. Threatened legal action when he refused. Patricia's expression darkens. That changes things. If there's a history of intimidation around these documents, you need to be very careful. I'm a property lawyer, Claire. This is getting into areas beyond my expertise. You need specialists, Native American law, historical claims, possibly criminal defense if someone tries to argue you're in possession of stolen documents. I don't have money for specialists. No, but the tribes might, if these documents prove treaty violations. The Warm Springs Confederated Tribes have their own legal team. They've been fighting boundary disputes for decades. And there are advocacy organizations, historical societies, people who'd work pro bono if the evidence is as strong as you say. Claire looks at Ranger, who's lying in a patch of sunlight, watching them with patient attention. The dog has been with her through the worst months of her life. Found this cache when she didn't know where to look. Led her to Theodore's second hiding spot. Maybe he's leading her to the right choice now. I need to see all the documents first, Claire says slowly. Really understand what's there. Then I'll decide what to do. That's smart. Take your time. The property is secured legally. I filed the transfer this morning. It's officially yours. No one can enter without your permission. Patricia pauses. But Claire, be prepared. Once word spreads that you're not selling immediately, people are going to get curious. Property records are public. Someone determined could find out you own this land and start asking questions about why you're refusing development offers. Let them ask. After Patricia leaves, Claire spends the afternoon going through every document in the cache methodically, taking notes, organizing them chronologically. She's rusty. Her nursing career didn't require this kind of detailed analysis, but she was always good at patterns, at seeing how pieces fit together. And a pattern is definitely emerging. The Spanish land grants from 1802 to 1810 cover roughly 200,000 acres. When Oregon became a state in 1859, those grants were supposed to be honored under federal law. But Claire finds letters showing that federal surveyors deliberately lost the grant documents and told the Ortega family that without proof, their claim was invalid. The mining claims from the 1860s to 1870s were filed on land that was legally protected under treaties. But the treaty maps were altered to show the protected boundaries in the wrong place, making the claims appear legitimate. The revised treaty with the Warm Springs tribes reduced their land from 12 million acres to 600,000 acres. But one of the documents shows the original boundaries, signed by tribal leaders and federal representatives. Someone later destroyed that version and replaced it with the smaller boundaries. It's not just fraud. It's systematic theft on a massive scale. And Jackson Hartwell documented all of it, probably at great personal risk. As the sun sets, Claire makes a fire in the cabins with stove and cooks a simple meal from canned soup she found in Theodore's supplies. She sits on the porch eating, Ranger beside her, watching the stars emerge. She thinks about the offer. $60,000. Life-changing money for her. But chicken feed compared to what the land is actually worth. And nothing compared to what the documents represent. She thinks about the Ortega family, who lost 200,000 acres because federal officials lost their legal papers. About the Warm Springs tribes, who lost 11.4 million acres because treaty maps were altered. About miners and homesteaders who thought they had legitimate claims, not knowing the land had been stolen first. And she thinks about that certificate. $3 million in 1871 gold. $150 million today. Blood money. Payment from someone, probably wealthy San Francisco sympathizers, to fund Jackson's documentation work, to pay for lawyers for protection, for the dangerous work of collecting evidence against powerful people. Money that was never used because Jackson got scared or was killed. The letters stop abruptly in 1880, and his death certificate from 1903 doesn't explain the missing decades. Someone scared him into silence, just like they scared Theodore 40 years ago. Claire wraps her jacket tighter against the mountain cold. Ranger shifts closer, his warmth solid and reassuring. She's homeless. She has no resources, no legal team, no support system. She's one woman with a dog and a pile of documents that could bring down governments and corporations. The smart thing would be to take the 60,000. Walk away. Let someone else deal with this. But Claire thinks about the patients she treated as a nurse. The ones who came in with treatable conditions that had become emergencies because they couldn't afford preventive care. The elderly woman who rationed her insulin because the price had tripled. The young mother who delayed chemotherapy because she couldn't miss work. The system is broken. And it's broken because people with power broke it, then lied about what they'd done. Just like they broke treaties and lied about boundaries. Just like they stole land and lied about ownership. And people like her, people without power, just have to accept it. Just have to live with the consequences of other people's crimes. Unless someone fights back. Ranger lifts his head, ears pricked. Then he stands, a low growl building in his throat. Claire tenses. It's full dark now. The forest a wall of black beyond the cabin's small porch. Movement in the shadows. Claire reaches for the flashlight Patricia left her, flicks it on. Two figures stand at the edge of the clearing. Not approaching, just watching. One raises a hand slowly. Not threatening, but definitely making their presence known. Who's there? Claire calls. Her voice steady despite her racing heart. The figure stepped forward into the flashlight beam. An older woman, probably her 70s, with long gray braids and weather-brown skin. A younger man, maybe 40, with similar features. Clearly related. Claire Donovan, the woman calls. Yes. I'm Marie 3 Rivers. This is my grandson, Joseph. Our family has been waiting a very long time to meet someone from a Hartwell family. Section 3. Decision point, the stakes rise. Claire invites them onto the porch, though Ranger remains alert, positioned between her and the visitors. The dog's judgment has been reliable so far. He's not growling anymore, but he's not relaxed either. Marie 3 Rivers settles onto the porch step with the ease of someone comfortable in the wilderness. She's probably in her mid-70s, her face deeply lined but her eyes sharp and assessing. Joseph remains standing, his posture protective. How did you know I was here? Claire asks. Property transfer records. Joseph says. His voice is educated, professional. We've been monitoring this land for 40 years, waiting to see what happened to it after Theodore Hartwell died. Monitoring it, Claire repeats carefully. Marie nods. My great-great-grandfather was 3 Rivers. He worked with Jackson Hartwell in the 1870s, trying to document the treaty violations and land theft. When federal marshals started hunting them, Jackson told 3 Rivers to disappear into the mountains. He did. Survived another 30 years. Passed down the story of what they tried to do. She gestures to the trading post, barely visible in the darkness. Jackson hid documents there. Evidence that could prove the Warm Springs tribes never legally ceded the land that was taken from them. Evidence that 3 Rivers died trying to protect. He didn't die, Claire says. You just said he survived 30 years. He died in 1910, Marie says quietly, shot by men who came asking questions about documents. He never told them anything, took the secret to his grave, but he'd already passed the story to his children. When a Hartwell is finally brave enough to open the trading post, help them. The evidence belongs to all the people who were wronged, not just to one family. Joseph pulls out a phone, scrolls through photos, hands it to Claire. This is from our family archive. The photo shows a daguerreotype, old, faded, but clear enough. Two men standing in front of the trading post. One is white, probably in his 40s, with a weathered face and determined eyes. The other is Native American, tall, wearing traditional clothing mixed with trader's gear. Jackson Hartwell in Three Rivers. Joseph says, 1878, 6 months before the federal marshals came, 6 months before they had to scatter. Claire studies the photo. Jackson looks exactly like she imagines her great-great-grandfather might. Solid, honest, the kind of man who wouldn't back down from a fight. And Three Rivers looks the same. Partners, equals. I found the documents, Claire says carefully. All of them. The treaties, the land grants, everything. Marie's breath catches. Are they intact? Can they be authenticated? They look authentic to me. But I'm not an expert. We have experts, Joseph says quickly. Tribal historians, legal specialists. If you'll let us see the documents, we can verify them, start building a case. Slow down, Claire interrupts. I need to understand what's happening here. You've been watching this property for 40 years. Not watching continuously. Marie clarifies, but paying attention. My mother knew Theodore Hartwell. Met him once in the 1980s. Tried to talk to him about what Jackson had hidden. He told her to leave, said it was too dangerous to dig up the past. She looked sad. He wasn't wrong about the danger, but he was wrong about leaving it buried. The past doesn't stay buried. It just keeps hurting people until someone deals with it. What do you want from me? Claire asks directly. Marie meets her eyes. Justice. Real justice, not the performative kind. The treaties were violated. Land was stolen. People died. We can't undo history, but we can acknowledge what happened. We can correct the public record. And maybe, if the documents are strong enough, we can get some of the land back. Not all of it. Too much has changed. But the sacred sites, the protected areas, the places that were stolen through fraud. And the certificate? Claire asks. The gold? Joseph and Marie exchange glances. We know about the certificate. Joseph says, family stories mention that Jackson received funding from San Francisco abolitionists and reformers, people who believed in honoring treaties and protecting native rights. If that certificate is real, it belongs to everyone who was part of that fight, not just the Hartwells. He's right, Claire realizes. The gold wasn't Jackson's personal wealth. It was movement funding, money meant to support the work of documentation and legal action. I haven't decided what to do yet, Claire says. I need time to think. We understand, Marie says, but I need to warn you about something. Robert Vance came to see you today, didn't he? Claire tenses. How do you know that? Because he approached us 2 years ago. Wanted to buy our land as part of his mineral rights package. When we refused, he started filing legal challenges, trying to argue our deeds were improperly recorded, that treaty boundaries were unclear. Anything to force us to sell. Joseph's jaw tightens. 3 families in our tribe have been forced to sell because they couldn't afford to keep fighting him. Robert Vance doesn't take no for an answer. And if he suspects you have documents that could interfere with his development plans, he'll come after you hard. I don't have money for lawyers, Claire says bluntly. I'm homeless. I've been living in shelters for 8 months. I can barely afford food. Marie nods slowly. I know. Patricia told me. Claire stiffens. Patricia talks to you? We've known each other for years. She handles some legal work for the tribe. She called me yesterday after meeting you. Said she thought you'd do the right thing with the documents once you understood what they meant. Marie pauses. She also said you'd need support. Legal help, protection, resources. We can provide that. The tribe has lawyers. The advocacy organizations we work with have historians, expert witnesses. In exchange for what? In exchange for making the documents public. Joseph says, for standing with us and saying what was done was wrong. for helping us correct the historical record and pursue the land claims the documents support. And the certificate? Claire asks again. That's more complicated, Marie admits. Legally, it probably belongs to you as Theodore's heir. But morally, she trails off. Morally, it belongs to everyone Jackson was trying to help. Claire finishes. I get it. She stands, walks to the edge of the porch. Ranger follows, pressing against her leg. She can see lights from Prineville in the far distance, tiny pinpricks in the vast darkness. Civilization, the world she came from, the world that chewed her up and spit her out when she couldn't pay her medical bills after her husband died. She could go back to that world with $60,000. Maybe more if she plays Robert Vance against other buyers. Or she could stay here, fight for something that matters. Use the documents to expose a century and a half of fraud and theft. Probably lose. Probably end up right back where she started, homeless, powerless, forgotten. But maybe not. Maybe with the tribe's support, with good lawyers and expert witnesses, maybe they could actually win. I need one night, Claire says, turning back to Marie and Joseph, to think about this, to make sure I'm choosing for the right reasons. Marie stands, joints creaking. One night is fair. But Claire, I need you to understand, time is not on our side. Robert Vance filed permits last week for exploratory mining on lands adjacent to yours. If those permits are approved, he can start extraction within 6 months. Once that happens, environmental damage begins. Sacred sites get destroyed. And the legal fight becomes about stopping ongoing destruction rather than preventing it in the first place. How do you know about the permits? Because he filed them for lands that include 2 of our family's properties, Joseph says grimly. Properties he's still trying to force us to sell. He's betting we'll give up rather than fight both the lawsuits and the environmental destruction. After they leave, Claire sits alone on the cabin porch, Ranger curled at her feet. The mountain night is cold and absolutely silent, except for the occasional cry of an owl hunting in the forest. She thinks about Jackson Hartwell, meeting with 3 Rivers and Ortega in secret, documenting crimes that powerful men wanted hidden, risking everything for justice that he never saw achieved. She thinks about Theodore, finding the cash and immediately sealing it, too afraid to act, living 40 more years with that weight. Die without ever being brave enough to expose the truth. 2 men, 2 choices, 2 very different legacies. And now it's Claire's turn to choose. She pulls out the legal brief from the wooden box, reads it again by flashlight. The lawyers were clear. Pursuing this would be difficult, dangerous, expensive. But they also concluded that the documents could support viable legal claims. The evidence is strong. The fraud is documented. The treaty violations are clear. If someone is willing to fight, Claire looks down at Ranger, who watches her with those knowing eyes. You found it, boy. You led me right to it. Like you knew. The dog's tail thumps once against the porch boards. Maybe that's magical thinking. Maybe Ranger just smelled old paper and got curious. But Claire has spent 8 months with this dog. She's learned to trust his instincts. And his instincts led her to documents that could change everything. She goes inside, pulls out her backpack, and dumps out the meager contents. 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a paperback novel someone left at the shelter, the envelope from the attorney. This is everything she owns in the world. This and a dog, and a trading post full of secrets, and a choice. Claire makes her decision. The next morning, she hikes back to the trading post at dawn. Ranger ranges ahead, clearly delighted to be in the forest, his tail high and movements confident. This is his element. Open space, wild land, freedom. Claire understands that feeling now. For 8 months, she's been compressed into shelters and soup kitchens, making herself small, trying not to be noticed. Here, in these mountains, she can breathe. The trading post looks different in morning light. Less ominous, more like what it actually is, a piece of history, preserved by accident and fear. She spends an hour carefully photographing every document in cache. Her phone is old, the camera not great, but she makes sure each image is clear and legible. Then she backs them up to a cloud storage account, password protected. If something happens to the originals, The evidence won't be lost. Then she takes one more step. She writes a letter, addressed to 3 different people: Patricia Vance, Marie 3 Rivers, and a journalist of the Oregonian whose byline she remembers from investigative pieces about treaty violations. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. The documents described below are hidden at location. They prove systematic fraud, treaty violations, and land theft spanning from 1802 to present day. Make them public. Don't let them be buried again. She seals 3 copies, hides one in the trading post, one in the cabin, and puts one in her backpack. Insurance. Then she walks back to the cabin and calls Marie 3 Rivers on the phone number Joseph left. "I'm in," Claire says simply. "I'll work with you." We make the documents public, pursue the land claims, expose what was done. All of it. She can hear the relief in Marie's voice. "Thank you. You won't regret this." "I might," Claire says honestly, "but I'll regret taking the money and walking away more." They arrange to meet the next day. Joseph will bring the tribal lawyers and historians to examine the documents. They'll start building a case, planning how to go public in a way that maximizes impact and protects the evidence. Claire hangs up and immediately calls Patricia. "I need you to do something for me." Claire says, "I need you to tell Robert Vance that I've decided not to sell, that the property is not available at any price." Patricia is quiet for a moment. "Claire, are you sure? He's not going to take that well." "I'm sure. And Patricia, I need you to know that I've documented everything in the trading post. Multiple copies, multiple locations. If something happens to me, if the building mysteriously burns down, if there's an accident, the documents still become public." "Jesus, Claire, you think it's that serious?" Theodore's journal talks about threats, intimidation, a break-in. Someone tried to buy the documents from him in 1985, threatened legal action when he refused. These documents are worth billions in land value and mineral rights. People have killed for a lot less. Patricia's voice is grim when she speaks again. "I'll tell Robert. But Claire, you need protection. Real protection. I'm going to call a friend of mine, former FBI agent who does private security. He owes me a favor. I can't afford. Pro bono. He'll do it as a favor to me. Just let him assess the situation. Give you advice. Please." Claire agrees, mostly to make Patricia feel better. But after she hangs up, she realizes the attorney is probably right. She's one woman alone on a mountain with documents worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She's a target now. That night, Claire sleeps fitfully, range on the floor beside her bed. She wakes several times to small sounds: wind in the pines, an animal moving through the underbrush, the cabin settling. Or maybe someone watching. In the darkness, she whispers to Ranger, "We did the right thing, didn't we?" The dog shifts, rests his head on the bed beside her hand. His warmth is solid, reassuring. Outside, the mountain keeps its secrets, but not for much longer. Claire Donovan has made her choice, and there's no going back now. Joseph 3 Rivers arrives the next morning with 3 others, a tribal attorney named Sarah Whitehorse, a historian from Portland State University named Dr. James Chun, and a document preservation specialist named Elena Martinez from the Oregon Historical Society. They gather in the trading post, and Claire watches their faces as they examine the documents for the first time. Sarah's hands shake as she holds the alternate treaty. Dr. Chin goes completely still when he sees the Spanish land grants. Elena immediately starts taking photographs with professional equipment, her movements precise and reverent. "My God," Sarah breathes. "This is the 1855 treaty. The real one. We've been arguing for decades that the official version was altered, but we had no proof. This." She holds up the document, tears streaming down her face. "This is proof." Dr. Chun is examining the letters, cross-referencing dates with a laptop. These letters corroborate everything we've suspected about the surveyor fraud. William Kensington. He's in the historical record, praised as a pioneer of Western cartography. But these letters show he was deliberately falsifying maps to enable land theft. Can you authenticate them? Claire asks. Prove they're not forgeries? Elena looks up from her camera. The paper stock is consistent with the 1870s period. The ink chemistry can be tested. The handwriting can be compared to known samples from the individuals who wrote these letters. But just from visual inspection, these are genuine. The aging patterns, the way the ink has oxidized, you can't fake 150 years of aging. They work through the morning, cataloging every document. Sarah creates a detailed inventory. Dr. Chin builds a timeline showing how the fraud unfolded. Elena photographs everything from multiple angles, creating a digital archive. Around noon, Sarah sits back and looks at Claire directly. Do you understand what you have here? This isn't just historical curiosity. These documents can support active legal claims. The treaty violations mean the federal government owes the Warm Springs Confederated Tribes restitution. The Spanish land grants mean the Ortega family descendants, if we can find them, have valid claims to land currently owned by the state and private individuals. The mining frauds mean thousands of property deeds could be challenged. I know, Claire says quietly. And do you understand what that means to you personally? Sarah continues. The moment we file these claims, you become the center of a legal firestorm. Property owners will sue you. The state will challenge the document's authenticity. Mining companies with current extraction permits will try to discredit you. This will consume your life for years. I know, Claire repeats. Why? Joseph asks. You could sell to my uncle. That's Robert Vance's offer. Walk away with money. Start over. Why put yourself through this? Claire thinks about how to explain it, about the months of homelessness, the shame of standing in food bank lines, the fear of every interaction with police because she knew she looked suspicious, unkempt, tired, carrying everything she owned in a backpack, the way people looked through her like she was invisible, or worse, looked at her with disgust, as if poverty was a personal failing rather than a systemic failure. Because the same people who stole this land are the same kind of people who make insulin cost $300 a vial, she finally says. The same people who make medical bankruptcy the leading cause of homelessness. The same people who rig the system, so they always win and everyone else always loses. She looks at the documents spread across the counter. These papers prove that 150 years ago, powerful people committed massive fraud and got away with it, and their descendants are still profiting from it, still stealing, just in different ways. If I walk away and take the money, I'm complicit. I'm letting them win again. Sarah nods slowly. All right, then we fight, but we do it strategically. We don't just dump the documents online and hope for the best. We build an airtight case, coordinate with advocacy organizations, time the release for maximum impact. How long? Claire asks. 6 weeks. Maybe 8. We need to authenticate everything. Find the Ortega descendants. Coordinate with federal tribal advocacy groups. Brief the media properly. This is too important to rush. Claire thinks about Robert Vance's permits, about the mining that could start in 6 months. We don't have 8 weeks. Vance is already moving forward with extraction permits. Once mining starts, environmental damage begins. Sacred sites get destroyed. Then we work fast. Dr. Chin says, I can authenticate the documents in 2 weeks if I prioritize this. Elena can rush the scientific testing. Sarah can start drafting legal briefs while we wait for final authentication. They agree on a timeline. 3 weeks to authenticate and prepare, 1 week to coordinate with media and advocacy groups, then public release, 4 weeks total. It feels both impossibly fast and agonizingly slow. After they leave, promising to return in 2 days with preliminary authentication results, Claire walks the property with Ranger. The trading post sits on about 40 acres of forested land, bordered by the mineral springs Patricia mentioned. The springs are beautiful. Pools of crystal clear water surrounded by smooth stones, steam rising in the cool mountain air. Sacred sites, Maria had called them, places where her ancestors came for healing and ceremony. And Robert Vance wants to turn them into a spa resort, or more likely, destroy them entirely while mining the surrounding mountains for lithium and cobalt. Claire sits on a stone beside the largest pool, Ranger wading into the shallow edge to drink. The water is warm, heated by geothermal activity deep underground. She dips her hand in, feels the silky quality of the mineral-rich water. Her phone buzzes. A text from Patricia. Robert called. He's angry. Accused me of manipulating you. Said his offer is now off the table. Be careful. Claire types back. Understood. Thanks for the warning. She's not surprised. Men like Robert Vance don't handle rejection well. And if he suspects she's planning something beyond just refusing to sell, his response will escalate. That night, Ranger wakes her with a low growl. Claire sits up instantly, heart pounding. The dog is at the cabin window, hackles raised, staring into the darkness. Claire moves to join him, careful to stay back from the window where she can't be seen from outside. At first, she sees nothing. Then movement, a shadow near the trading post, about 100 yards away. Someone with a flashlight, the beam bobbing as they move around the building, testing the locks, looking for a way in. Claire's hand finds her phone, but there's no signal this deep in the mountains. No way to call for help. She watches as a figure circles the trading post, tries the door, then moves to the windows. The shutters hold. After 10 minutes, the figure retreats into the forest. A warning, or reconnaissance. Either way, someone is watching. Claire doesn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, she hikes to the trading post and finds evidence confirming what she saw. Fresh boot prints in the soft earth around the building. Scratches around the padlock where someone tried to pick it. A window shutter that's been pried at but held firm. She texts Joseph. Someone tried to break into the trading post last night. His response is immediate. Are you safe? Do you need us to come up? I'm fine, but we need to move faster. If they're trying to break in, they know something's there. Joseph calls her directly. I'm sending someone to stay with you. Ex-military. Good at security. His name is Marcus Webb. He'll be there by tonight. Joseph, I can't afford. Tribe is paying. This is bigger than you now, Claire. Those documents belong to all of us. We protect them. That means protecting you. Marcus Webb arrives at evening in a battered Jeep. He's in his 40s, built like someone who spent years in the military, with observant eyes and economical movements. He shakes Claire's hand firmly, gets down on one knee to let Ranger sniff him, then walks the property perimeter before saying anything else. You've got multiple access points here, he finally says. The main road, 2 game trails, and the Springs area can be approached from the east. I'll set up motion sensors on all the approaches. Solar-powered, wireless alerts to both our phones. Anyone comes within 50 yards, we'll know. How long are you planning to stay? As long as it takes. He looks at her directly. Joseph, fill me in. What you're doing matters. I spent 20 years fighting for what I thought were American values. Turns out a lot of that was protecting corporate interests and covering up crimes. This, he gestures at the trading post, this is actually worth protecting. Over the next week, Marcus transforms the property into a defensible position. He reinforces the trading post locks, installs motion sensors, sets up a communication relay that gives them spotty but functional phone service. He teaches Claire basic security awareness, how to vary her routine, how to spot surveillance, what to do if someone confronts her. You're not being paranoid, he tells her one evening as they sit on the cabin porch. Someone tried to break in. That means they know or suspect what you have. They'll try again, probably with more sophistication. What if they just burn the building? Claire asks, destroy the evidence? They won't, because they don't know if you've made copies. Destroying the originals without knowing where the copies are just guarantees the evidence goes public. They'll want to intimidate you into giving up the documents, maybe claim they're forgeries, discredit you personally. Burning the building is a last resort. That's not particularly comforting. Marcus smiles slightly. Wasn't meant to be comforting. Was meant to be realistic. You're in a fight now. Better to understand what you're fighting against. Dr. Chin returns after a week with preliminary authentication results. He looks exhausted but energized, the way academics get when they've made a significant discovery. The documents are genuine, he says without preamble. I verified the paper stock, analyzed the ink, compared handwriting to authenticated samples. These letters were written by William Kensington, by federal surveyors, by government officials. The treaty is written on official U.S. government paper stock from the 1850s. The Spanish land grants bear genuine seals from the Spanish colonial administration. He spreads his laptop across the cabin's small table, showing Claire page after page of analysis. More than that, the content corroborates with known historical events. The dates align with documented surveyor movements. The places mentioned match historical land office records. Even the small details, whether references, mentions of specific individuals, all check out. So it's real, Claire says. All of it. All of it. And Claire, Dr. Chen looks at her seriously. This is one of the most significant historical finds in Western American history. These documents rewrite our understanding of how the West was settled. They prove systematic fraud at the highest levels of government. They document cultural genocide and land theft on a massive scale. How is the university responding? Dr. Chen's expression clouds. That's complicated. The administration is excited about the academic significance, but they're also nervous about the legal implications. If we publish research based on these documents, we could be named in lawsuits. Property owners will argue we're part of a conspiracy to defraud them of legally held titles. But you're going to publish anyway. Of course, academic freedom exists exactly for situations like this. But I wanted you to know the pressure is already starting. I've gotten calls from 3 different law firms, all offering to consult on the project, which really means they want early access to the documents so their clients can prepare legal defenses. Did you tell them anything? No, but the fact that they're calling means word is spreading. Someone knows you have something significant. That night, Marcus's motion sensors trigger at 2 a.m. Claire wakes instantly to Ranger's growl and the ping from her phone. Marcus is already moving, pulling on boots, checking security camera feed on his laptop. 2 individuals, he says quietly, approaching from the east near the springs. Professional movement. They're avoiding the main sensors, trying to find a blind spot. He hands Claire a canister of bear spray. Stay here with Ranger. Lock the door. Don't open it unless you hear my voice. If anyone else comes to the door, use the spray. Marcus, I'm not engaging unless I have to. Just going to let them know the property is guarded. He slips out into the darkness. Claire watches from the window. Ranger pressed against her legs. She can't see much, just occasional shadows moving through the trees. Then a flashlight beam, voices raised in surprise, and 2 figures retreating rapidly toward the forest. Marcus returns 10 minutes later. They're gone. Didn't get close enough for me to identify them, but they were definitely doing reconnaissance, testing response time, seeing if the property is really guarded or if I'm just here during the day. What do we do? Document everything. I took photos. We'll send them to Joseph and Sarah. They might recognize the individuals or the vehicle they used. And he pauses. We accelerate the timeline. If they're this aggressive already, waiting 3 more weeks is too long. Sarah agrees when they call her in the morning. We're going to move the public release up. 2 weeks from today. Dr. Chun and Elena can finish authentication by then. I'll have the legal briefs ready. We coordinate with the tribal council, brief the media, and go public all at once. What about finding the Ortega descendants? Claire asks. Working on it. We got genealogists tracing the family line. But even if we can't find them in 2 weeks, we release anyway. The documents speak for themselves. The next 10 days blur together. Claire barely leaves the property. Marcus says it's safe to stay put, maintain a predictable defensive position rather than travel where they could be ambushed or followed. She spends her time going through Jackson Hartwell's journals more carefully, looking for any additional evidence or context. She finds an entry from August 1879 that makes her catch her breath. 3 Rivers came today with news. The Ortega family has fled to Mexico. Federal marshals raided their home, claimed they were squatters on government land despite the Spanish grants. Their eldest son fought back and was killed. The rest of the family barely escaped with their lives. I am complicit in this. I documented their legal claims. I promised we would fight through official channels. But official channels are controlled by the very men who are stealing the land. There are no official channels for justice when the government itself is criminal. The certificate from our San Francisco benefactors sits unused. $3 million in gold, payment for the work we were supposed to do, lawyers, publicity, political pressure. But we cannot spend it without exposing ourselves. Cannot hire lawyers without revealing that we have evidence they want destroyed. I am trapped by my own fear, and people are dying because of it. Claire photographs the entry, sends it to Sarah. The attorney calls within an hour. This is important, Sarah says. It establishes that Jackson received the money specifically to fund legal action and advocacy. That makes the certificate more defensible if the bank tries to argue it was obtained fraudulently. He was essentially a paid researcher and documentarian. Does that help us find the Ortega descendants? It gives us a starting point. If they fled to Mexico in 1879, there will be records, border crossings, property sales, Catholic church records. I've got genealogists checking archives in Chihuahua and Sonora. We'll find them. 3 days before the planned public release, Patricia calls with alarming news. Robert Vance has filed a lawsuit against you personally, against the tribe, against Dr. Chun and the university. He's claiming you're engaged in a conspiracy to defraud legitimate property owners through forged documents. Claire's stomach drops. He doesn't even know what documents we have. He doesn't need to know. This is a preemptive strike. He files a lawsuit, gets it media coverage, plants a seed that everything you're about to reveal is fake. Then when you release the real documents, people are already skeptical. Can he do that? He already did. The lawsuit is filed. You'll be served with papers within 24 hours. And Claire, he's asking for an emergency injunction preventing you from publicizing or transferring any documents found on the property until the court determines ownership. The documents are mine. I inherited them legally. I know, but he's arguing that if the documents were obtained through fraud by Jackson Hartwell, stolen from government archives, for example, then they're stolen property and you can't legally possess them. It's a ridiculous argument, but it might work long enough to delay your release. Sarah Whitehorse is on the next call. We're not delaying. This is exactly the kind of legal intimidation we expected. We release as planned day after tomorrow. Once the documents are public, Vance's lawsuit becomes moot. He can't suppress what's already released. But if the court orders me not to release them, then I release them, Sarah says firmly, as tribal attorney, acting on behalf of the Confederated Tribes. You shared the documents with us for authentication. We have copies. If you're enjoined from releasing them, we're not. Claire feels something in her chest loosen slightly. She's not alone in this. If they silence her, others will speak. There's one more thing, Patricia says. The lawsuit lists your full legal name, your current address at the shelter in Bend, which is public record from when you were staying there, and describes you as an indigent person with a history of financial instability and judgment issues, who stands to gain financially from perpetrating document fraud. The words hit like a physical blow. Claire has spent 8 months trying to survive homelessness with whatever dignity she could maintain, and now it's being weaponized against her, used to paint her as desperate and dishonest. He's trying to destroy your credibility before you even speak. Patricia continues. Classic legal strategy. If he can make people see you as unreliable, they'll dismiss whatever you say. Marcus, who's been listening to the call on speaker, speaks up. Then we don't let you be the primary spokesperson. Marie Three Rivers should make the announcement. She's a respected elder. Her family's history with this land is documented. The tribe's legal team presents the documents. You're there, but you're not the focus. No, Claire says. I appreciate the strategy, but no. These documents were hidden by my family. 2 generations of Hartwell men were too afraid to expose the truth. I'm not hiding behind other people. I'll stand there and take whatever comes. Claire, Patricia starts. I mean it. Jackson Hartwell documented these crimes. Theodore preserved the evidence. I'm the one who's actually releasing it. If Vance wants to come after me, let him. I've been homeless, afraid, and powerless. I'm not powerless anymore. I own land. I have allies, and I have the truth. That's more than I've had in years. There's silence on the call. Then Marie's voice warm with approval. Your great-great-grandfather would be proud. The next day, Marcus's sensors detect another approach, but this time it's Patricia's Subaru, accompanied by two other vehicles. Sarah Whitehorse emerges from one, Dr. Chun from another, and from Patricia's car comes a woman Claire doesn't recognize, carrying professional camera equipment. Jenna Torres. The woman introduces herself. Documentary filmmaker. Sarah called me. I want to film the story. All of it. The documents, the legal fight, your personal journey. Get on record before Vance's PR machine buries the truth. I can't afford. Don't need to. I got grant funding for a project on Native American land rights. This fits perfectly. And strategically, having video documentation protects everyone. They can't claim you forged documents if there's footage of you finding them sealed in a century-old cache. Claire looks at Sarah, who nods. She's good. Works with tribal communities across the West. Trustworthy. All right. Claire agrees. They spend the day filming. Jenna captures a trading post exterior, the interior with its preserved 1870s goods, the hiding place under floorboards. She films Claire talking about finding the cache, about Uncle Theo's letter, about the decision to go public. She films Sarah explaining the legal significance, Dr. Chen discussing the authentication process, Marie talking about her family's history with Jackson Hartwell and Three Rivers. This is powerful material. Jenna says as they break for lunch. The personal story, homeless woman inherits trading post, finds documents that could change history. That's compelling. The legal story, systematic fraud and treaty violations, that's important. Together, they're undeniable. That evening, as the sun sets over mountains, they gather in the trading post for one final review. The documents are spread across the counter, each one photographed and cataloged. Sarah has prepared a press release. Dr. Chin has written an academic summary. Marie has drafted a statement on behalf of the tribal council. Tomorrow, they'll release everything. But tonight, Claire sits alone with Range in the cabin, looking at the papers that have transformed her life. 3 weeks ago, she was sleeping in a shelter, owning nothing, with no idea what came next. Now she's at the center of what Sarah calls the most significant Native American land rights case in a generation. She's about to expose fraud that goes back 150 years. She's about to make powerful enemies and possibly lose everything again. Her phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. Last chance. $100,000. Documents and property. Transfer it all and walk away. You have 12 hours. Claire shows it to Marcus, who's doing his evening security check. He reads it, his expression darkening. Screenshot it. Forward it to Sarah and Patricia. This is evidence of intimidation. What if they do more than intimidate? Then I do my job, which is making sure you live to see this through. He looks at her seriously. Claire, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow, when you go public, you're going to make enemies. Real enemies. People who spent their entire lives believing they legitimately own land that these documents prove was stolen. Mining companies with billions in projected revenue that could evaporate. Government officials whose predecessors committed documented crimes. They're not going to just accept it and move on. I know. Do you? Because it's one thing to know it intellectually. It's another to live with the reality. Death threats, lawsuits, strangers investigating every detail of your life, looking for anything they can use to discredit you, your homelessness, your medical bankruptcy, your husband's death. It'll all be weaponized. Claire thinks about the months after David died, the medical bills that kept coming, the insurance company's refusal to cover his experimental cancer treatment, the gradual slide from financial stability to poverty to homelessness, the shame of it, the isolation. Let them look, she says quietly. Let them dig into my past and talk about how I lost everything. Maybe people need to hear that story. Maybe people need to understand that in this country, you can do everything right, have a career, pay your taxes, love your family, and still lose everything because you got sick and the system failed you. She looks at Marcus. I'm not ashamed anymore. I survived. I'm still here. And I'm about to do something that matters. That's more than a lot of people can say. Marcus nods slowly. All right then. Tomorrow we go to war. But neither of them sleeps much that night, because they both know that wars have casualties. And not everyone who fights for justice survives to see it achieved. At 3 a.m., Claire lies awake listening to Ranger's steady breathing, thinking about Jackson Hartwell, about Three Rivers, about all the people who fought and lost and disappeared into history. She won't disappear. She won't back down. Tomorrow, the world learns the truth. Whatever comes after, she'll face it. Section 5. The Deeper Secret, Second Layer Revelation. The press conference is scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Warm Springs Tribal Community Center. Sarah chose a location deliberately, neutral ground, on tribal land, making a statement about who has authority to speak about treaty violations. Claire rides down from the mountains with Marcus and Patricia in Patricia's Subaru, Ranger in the back. She's dressed in the one outfit she owns that looks professional, khaki pants and a clean blue shirt that Patricia bought her 3 days ago, insisting she needed something for the cameras. "You look fine," Patricia says, glancing at her in the rear-view mirror. "Nervous? Terrified? Good. That means you understand what's at stake." The community center parking lot is full when they arrive. News van from Portland, Bend, even Seattle. Reporters with cameras and notepads. Tribal members gathering to witness history. And in the back, partially obscured by a truck, a familiar expensive pickup. Robert Vance is here. Marcus notices it too. Interesting. He's taking this seriously. Sarah meets them at the entrance. She's wearing traditional regalia, a beaded dress and moccasins, her hair in long braids, making a statement. This isn't just legal maneuvering. This is about identity, culture, justice. "We're ready," Sarah says. The documents are inside, secured under glass. Dr. Chun is here with his authentication analysis. Marie is prepared to speak first. Then me, then you if you want to. We've got copies of everything to distribute to the press. Has Vance tried anything? Not yet, but his attorneys are here. They'll probably try to disrupt the conference, claim the documents are fraudulent, threaten legal action. Just stick to the facts. Don't engage if they try to provoke you. The community center's main hall is packed. Chairs arranged in rows, cameras on tripods, the documents displayed on tables at the front behind protective glass. Claire sees Dr. Chin talking with another academic, Elena Martinez photographing everything, Jenna Torres's camera crew setting up to capture the event. And in the back row, Robert Vance is between two men in expensive suits. His expression is carefully neutral, but his eyes are hard as they track Claire across the room. Marie Three Rivers opens the conference. She speaks in both English and her tribal language, her voice steady and strong. "For 150 years, my people have known the truth. Our land was stolen through fraud and violence. Treaties were violated. Sacred sites were desecrated. When we protested, we were told we had no proof. The documents had been lost, they said. The boundaries were unclear, they said. Our memories were unreliable, they said." She pauses, letting the weight of those words settle. "Today we present proof. Documents hidden for generations by a man who tried to protect the truth but didn't live to see it honored. Documents that show exactly how our land was stolen and who was responsible." Sarah takes over, walking the audience through the findings. The alternate treaty with the correct boundaries. The letters showing deliberate surveyor fraud. The proof that government officials knowingly falsified records. Dr. Chun presents his authentication analysis, explaining in clear terms how they verified the document's age and authenticity. He shows comparison handwriting samples, paper stock analysis, everything needed to establish that these aren't forgeries or fabrications. Then Claire steps forward. She's not a practiced public speaker. Her hand shakes slightly as she grips the podium. But she thinks about Jackson Hartwell, documenting crimes in this very trading post. About Theodore, too afraid to speak. About all the people who stayed silent because speaking was too dangerous. "My name is Claire Donovan," she begins. 3 weeks ago, I was homeless, sleeping in shelters, struggling to survive. Then I inherited my great-uncle's property and found documents that changed everything. She tells the story simply. The sealed trading post. The cash on the floorboards. Ranger finding the second hiding place. Uncle Theo's letter explaining his fear. The choice she faced. Take the money and stay silent, or expose the truth and fight. I'm not a historian, she says. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just someone who got tired of watching powerful people get away with crimes, while ordinary people suffer the consequences. These documents prove that 150 years ago, government officials and business owners committed massive fraud. They stole land. They violated treaties. They destroyed lives. And they got away with it because they destroyed the evidence. She looks directly at Robert Vance. Except they didn't destroy all of it. My great-great-grandfather hid the evidence, and now it's public. And everyone who's profited from that fraud needs to answer for it. The room erupts with questions. Reporters shouting, cameras flashing. Sarah steps in to manage the chaos, calling on journalists one by one. Then one of Vance's attorneys stands up. I have a question for Miss Donovan. Is it true that you stand to personally profit from these claims? That you possess a certificate of deposit potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars? The room goes silent. Sarah shoots Claire a warning look. They'd agreed not to discuss the certificate yet, to keep the focus on the treaty violations and land fraud. But Claire is tired of hiding. Yes, there's a certificate of deposit issued to my great-great-grandfather in 1871. It was payment from abolitionists and reform advocates who funded his work documenting these crimes. The certificate was never redeemed because Jackson Hartwell was intimidated into silence. It's mine legally as his heir. So you're not just a concerned citizen, the attorney presses. You're someone with a direct financial interest in pressing these claims. Your credibility. My credibility, Claire interrupts, comes from the documents themselves, which are real, which are authenticated by independent experts, which prove fraud regardless of what I personally stand to gain. Another reporter calls out, Mr. Vance, do you want to respond? Robert Vance stands slowly. He's dressed in an expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, projecting authority and reasonable concern. I'm deeply troubled by what I've heard today, he says smoothly. Not because the documents are real, I have no way to evaluate that yet, but because this appears to be a coordinated attempt to invalidate thousands of legally held property titles across Oregon, property that families have owned for generations, businesses that employ thousands of people, all based on documents that conveniently surfaced at exactly the moment when development interests threatened Miss Donovan's financial gain. He turns to face the cameras. I've filed a lawsuit challenging the legitimacy of these claims. I've asked the court to review whether these documents were legally obtained or represent stolen government property. And I'm calling on state and federal officials to conduct a thorough investigation before anyone takes action based on these allegations. Mr. Vance, another reporter calls. Isn't it true that you've been trying to acquire Miss Donovan's property from mining development? That you stand to lose billions if these treaty violations are upheld? Vance's expression hardens. I'm a businessman with legitimate development interests. The property in question has valuable mineral resources. I made a fair offer. Ms. Donovan refused. That's her right. But it's also suspicious that immediately after refusing my offer, she produces documents claiming the land belongs to someone else and is worth millions. Sarah steps in. Mr. Vance is conflating two separate issues. The treaty violations are documented fact. The land fraud is proven by authentic historical records. These claims don't depend on Ms. Donovan's credibility or motivations. They stand on their own evidentiary basis. But Vance has already accomplished what he intended. He's planted doubt, suggested Claire is motivated by greed rather than justice, implied the timing is too convenient to be trustworthy. The press conference continued for another hour, reporters asking technical questions about the documents, about potential legal remedies, about the timeline for any action. But Claire can feel the narrative shifting. What was supposed to be a clear revelation of historical injustice is becoming a story about disputed claims and competing financial interests. As the crowd disperses, Vance approaches Claire directly. Marcus moves to intercept, but Claire waves him back. That was well played. Vance says quietly, you have good advisors, good legal team. You might actually cause me some problems. This isn't about you. Everything is about me when it threatens my business interests. He leans slightly closer. You think you're fighting for justice. You're actually fighting for control of billions in mineral resources. The Warm Springs tribe, the Ortega descendants, if you find them, they don't want justice. They want money, and you'll get your cut, your $150 million certificate. That money was meant to fund legal advocacy for stolen land. Claire says, I'm using it exactly as intended. Noble, but naive. Here's what's going to happen. I'll tie this up in court for years. Every property owner whose title is challenged will sue. The state will fight to avoid paying reparations. The mining companies will deploy armies of lawyers. You'll spend every penny of that certificate on legal fees and never see actual justice. Or we'll win, and you'll lose. Vance smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. There's a third option. We settle. I buy your property for $500,000. You keep the certificate. The tribe drops the treaty claims in exchange for $50 million in development revenue share. Everyone gets something. No one spends the next decade in court. And the historical record, the truth about what was done, gets acknowledged appropriately. We fund a memorial, scholarships, cultural programs. Everyone moves forward. It's tempting. Claire can imagine it. Financial security, the tribe getting resources, the story being told. But without teeth, without consequences for fraud, without actually returning the stolen land. No, she says, we're going forward with the legal claims. All of them. Vance's expression hardens. Then you're a fool. You had a chance to walk away with money and dignity. Instead, you'll be destroyed. Your past will be examined. Your mental health will be questioned. Your motivations will be suspect. And in the end, you'll lose anyway. Because people like me always win. He walks away, his attorneys following. Marcus rejoins Claire. You handled that well. Did I? Claire feels exhausted, drained by the confrontation. He's right about one thing. This is going to get ugly. That night, back at the mountain property, they watch the news coverage. The story leads on every regional channel. Historical documents surface claiming widespread land fraud and treaty violations. The coverage is mixed. Some reporters treat it seriously, interviewing historians and legal experts. Others frame it as disputed claims with questionable timing. And the comments on social media are brutal. Convenient that these documents surfaced exactly when she needs money. Total scam. Another attempt to take away property from people who bought it legally. This is theft from current owners. She was homeless, and suddenly she's an expert on historical documents? Give me a break. But also, the authentication is solid. These documents are real. We need to take this seriously. Why are people defending property owners who benefited from fraud? The land was stolen. It should be returned. This is exactly the kind of historical reckoning our country needs. Good for her for having the courage to come forward. Claire turns off her phone after the 50th notification. She can't read anymore. The attacks on her character, the suggestions that she's mentally unstable or greedy or manipulative, they hit too close to the shame she's carried for months. The shame of becoming homeless, of losing everything, of needing help. Marie calls that evening. You did well today. Don't let the criticism get to you. This was always going to be a fight. Vance offered a settlement. $500,000 for me. $50 million for the tribe. We drop everything. I know. His attorneys contacted us too. The tribal council is meeting tomorrow to discuss it. Marie pauses. What did you tell him? No. But Marie, that's a lot of money for your community. Resources you could really use. Maybe I don't have the right to make this decision for everyone. You have every right. Those documents were entrusted to your family. Your great-great-grandfather died protecting them. You're honoring that legacy. And money isn't justice. $50 million is nothing compared to what was stolen. After the call, Claire walks outside. The stars are brilliant in the clear mountain sky. Ranger follows her, pressing against her leg. Did I do the right thing? She asks him. The dog looks at her with those knowing amber eyes. And somehow that's enough. Inside the cabin, Marcus is reviewing security footage from the day. We had 3 vehicles do slow passes by the property entrance while we were at the press conference, taking photos, checking if anyone was here. They're watching, preparing something. What do? We stay alert, document everything, and we move the original documents somewhere safer. They're too vulnerable here. They spend the next morning carefully packing the most critical documents, the original treaties, the most damning letters, the certificate, into waterproof containers. Sarah arranges for them to be transferred to a tribal secure storage facility on the reservation. Copies remain at the property, but the irreplaceable originals will be protected. As they're finishing the transfer, Patricia calls with news. The Ortega family descendants have been found. 3 siblings living in Hermosillo, Mexico. Their great-great-grandmother was Maria Ortega, daughter of the original land grant holder. The genealogists trace the family line through Mexican church records. Do they know about the land grants? Not yet. Sarah is coordinating with a Mexican attorney to contact them. But Claire, this is important. If they choose to press their claims, we're talking about 200,000 acres of land currently owned by the state, timber companies, and private individuals. The legal battles will be enormous. Are they likely to press the claims? Would you? Claire thinks about it. If she'd grown up knowing her family's land had been stolen through fraud, if she'd spent generations wondering what life would have been like if that land hadn't been taken, yes, she'd press the claim. 2 days later, Sarah calls with an update. I've spoken with the Ortega family attorney. The 3 siblings want to meet you. They're flying to Portland next week. They want to see the documents, understand what their family lost, decide how to proceed. Will they pursue the claim? I don't know yet, but their attorney is optimistic about the strength of the case. Spanish land grants are recognized under federal law. If we can prove the grants were valid and never legally extinguished, the current property owners have no legitimate title. The implications are staggering. Thousands of people who thought they owned land legally could discover their titles are invalid. Property values across eastern Oregon could collapse, and Robert Vance's mining development would be completely halted. No wonder he's fighting so hard. That night, Marcus's sensors detect movement again. But this time it's not people, it's vehicles. 3 trucks, moving slowly up the access road with their lights off. Marcus is already moving, pulling on gear. Stay inside. Lock the door. Keep Ranger with you. Marcus, what if there are more than you can handle? Then I delay them until tribal police arrive. Sarah already has them on alert. They can be here in 30 minutes. He slips out into the darkness. Claire watches from the window, heart pounding. Ranger growls low, sensing her tension. The trucks stop at the trading post. Men emerge. She counts 6 of them. They approach the building with bolt cutters, clearly intending to break in. Marcus's voice, amplified by a bullhorn, cuts through the darkness. This is private property. You're trespassing. Leave immediately. The men freeze. One of them shouts back, "We have authority to enter. Mr. Vance sent us to secure documents that may be stolen government property. This property is under tribal police protection. You have no authority here. Leave now or face arrest." A tense standoff. The men confer among themselves. Then, just as Claire thinks they might actually leave, one of them moves toward the trading post door with the bolt cutters. Marcus fires a warning shot, not at the man but into the ground nearby. The sharp crack echoes through the forest. "The next one won't be a warning," Marcus calls. The men retreat rapidly to their trucks, engines starting. Vehicles backing down the access road far faster than is safe. Marcus returns to the cabin, his expression grim. Got photos of them and their license plates. I'll send them to Sarah and tribal police. But Claire, they were serious. They came prepared to break in and take the documents by force. What if they come back with more people? Then it becomes a law enforcement matter. Breaking and entering, theft, possibly assault. Vance might be willing to intimidate and threaten. I don't think he's willing to risk felony charges. But neither of them is certain. The next morning, Sarah calls with news. Tribal police tracked the license plates. The trucks were rented by a security firm that does contract work for Vance's development company. I filed a police report and requested restraining orders. Will that stop them? Legally, yes. Practically. Sarah pauses. Desperate people do desperate things. And Vance is starting to look desperate. That afternoon, Claire receives a certified letter. It's from Vance's attorneys, and the contents make her blood run cold. The letter states that based on preliminary investigation, there is reason to believe the documents in Ms. Donovan's possession were unlawfully taken from government archives between 1870 to 1880. Possession of stolen federal property is a felony. Ms. Donovan is hereby advised that failure to surrender the documents immediately may result in criminal prosecution. It's a bluff. Claire is almost certain. The documents were never in government archives. They were collected by Jackson Hartwell directly from the people who wrote them. But the thread is clear. If she continues, she could face federal charges. Sarah reads the letter and immediately calls a press conference for the next day. They want to criminalize you? Fine. We'll make this public. Show everyone what they're trying to do. But that night, lying awake in a cabin with Ranger beside her, Claire wonders if she's been naive. She thought exposing the truth would be difficult. She didn't realize powerful people would try to destroy her personally, criminalize her actions, and potentially send her to prison. She thinks about Vance's offer. $500,000. Safety. An end to the constant fear and stress. But then she thinks about Jackson Hartwell, receiving similar threats 150 years ago, about Three Rivers, hunted by federal marshals and eventually murdered, about all the people who stayed silent, because speaking meant losing everything. She's already lost everything once. Medical bankruptcy, homelessness, shame, fear. She's already survived that. What's left to lose except her integrity? Ranger shifts beside her, rests his head on her hand. And somehow, that simple gesture of loyalty and trust makes the decision clear. She's not backing down. Tomorrow they fight back. The Ortega siblings arrive on a Tuesday morning, 6 days after the press conference. Claire meets them at the Warm Springs Tribal Center, where Sarah has arranged a private room for the family to review the documents. Rose Ortega is the eldest, maybe 60, with silver streak black hair and the bearing of someone who spent her life fighting for what's right. She's a retired teacher and community organizer in Hermosillo. Her brother Miguel is 55, an architect with careful, assessing eyes. The youngest, Elena, is 48, a historian who has spent years researching their family story without knowing the full truth. Our great-great-grandmother used to tell us stories, Elena says, as Sarah spreads the land grant documents on the table, about how we lost everything, how federal soldiers came and said our papers were fake, that we had no proof. She said our grandfather tried to fight, but they killed him, shot him in front of his family. Her hands shake as she touches the Spanish land grant, dated 1802. This is real. This is what they said didn't exist. Rosa reads through the documents methodically, her attorney beside her taking notes. When she reaches the letters describing how federal surveyors deliberately lost the Ortega family's grant papers, tears stream down her face. They called us liars, she says quietly. For 145 years, they called us liars, said we were making up stories about land we never owned. And all that time, they knew they'd stolen it. Miguel is reading Jackson Hartwell's journal entries about the Ortega family. He tried to help. Your great-great-grandfather tried to protect our family. He did, Claire confirms. And it cost him everything. He was threatened, intimidated, eventually forced into silence. But he kept the documents, kept the proof. The Ortega attorney, a woman named Carmen Reyes, is making detailed notes. These documents support multiple claims. The original land grant is valid under federal law. Spanish and Mexican grants were supposed to be honored when the U.S. acquired the territories. The letters prove the federal government knowingly defrauded your family. We can file claims to the land itself for compensation for 145 years of lost use and for damages. How much land? Miguel asks. According to these surveys, Carmen consults the maps, approximately 200,000 acres. Much of it is now owned by timber companies. the state government, and private individuals. Some of it has been developed. Some remains wilderness. We can't displace thousands of people from their homes. Rosa says immediately, that's not justice. That's just creating new victims. The law allows for various remedies, Carmen explains. Full return of undeveloped land, compensation for developed land at current market value, revenue sharing from commercial use. The goal isn't to punish current owners who bought in good faith. It's to acknowledge what was stolen and provide restitution. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible mountain stories like this one. They spend the day reviewing every document, building a complete picture of what happened to their family. By evening, Rosa looks exhausted but determined. We're pursuing the claim, she says. Not for money, though obviously we'll accept whatever compensation is fair, but for recognition, for acknowledgement. Our family has spent 5 generations being called liars. That ends now. Sarah nods. We'll coordinate the filing with the tribal treaty claims. Present a united front. Make it clear this is an isolated fraud. It's systematic theft that affected multiple communities. 2 days later, Sarah files illegal claims in federal court. The Warm Springs Confederated Tribes claim 11.4 million acres based on treaty violations. The Ortega family claims 200,000 acres based on the Spanish land grants. Combined, they're challenging property rights across half of eastern Oregon. The response is immediate and explosive. The Oregon governor holds a press conference calling the claims legally dubious and economically catastrophic. The state attorney general announces they'll fight frivolous attempts to invalidate legitimate property rights. Timber industry representatives warn of devastating job losses if these claims proceed. And Robert Vance goes on television. Claire watches from the cabin, Marcus beside her, as Vance appears on a Portland news program. He's polished, reasonable sounding, the perfect spokesperson for property owners who suddenly feel threatened. I sympathize with Ms. Donovan's situation, he says smoothly. Homelessness is a tragedy, but we cannot allow personal desperation to drive policy. These claims, if successful, would displace thousands of families, destroy billions in property value, and destabilize Oregon's economy. But the documents appear to be authentic. The interviewer presses. Perhaps they are. History is full of injustices. But we can't undo the past by creating new injustices in the present. The people who own this land today bought it legally. They've paid taxes on it for generations. They've built homes, businesses, lives. Taking that away isn't justice. It's theft just in the other direction. It's a compelling argument. And watching the interview, Claire realizes how many people will find it persuasive. It's easier to defend the status quo than to advocate for disruption, even when the status quo is built on fraud. Patricia calls as soon as the interview ends. He's good. I'll give him that. He's positioning this as protecting ordinary people against legal overreach. What do? We tell the real stories. The families who were displaced. The treaties that were violated. The systematic nature of the fraud. Vance is making this about current property owners. We need to make it about historical justice. Sarah arranges another press conference for the following week. But this time, it's not at the tribal center. It's at the trading post itself. We're going to show people where the documents were found. Sarah explains. Let them see the building Jackson Hartwell used as a base for his documentation work. Make it real and tangible, not just abstract legal claims. Marie agrees, and we'll bring Three Rivers' descendants. Let them tell their family story. Vance wants to make this about numbers and economics. We'll make it about people. The day of the press conference, the access road to the trading post is lined with vehicles, news crews, documentary filmmakers, tribal members, supporters, and protesters. Marcus is coordinated with tribal police to manage the crowd, but the property feels overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Claire stands on the trading post porch with Marie, Rosa Ortega, and Joseph Three Rivers. Sarah will speak first, laying out the legal framework. Then each of them will tell their family story. The cameras focus on Sarah as she begins. We're standing at a building that represents everything this case is about. Jackson Hartwell built this trading post as an honest business, but he also used it as a headquarters for documenting crimes, treaty violations, land fraud, systematic theft. He knew he was risking everything. Federal marshals hunted his allies. Surveyors threatened him. Government officials tried to silence him. She gestures to the trading post. But he kept working, kept documenting, kept the evidence safe. For 150 years, this evidence waited for someone brave enough to use it. Claire Donovan is that person. Marie speaks next, her voice carrying across the crowd. My great-great-grandfather, Three Rivers, died for this evidence. He was shot in 1910 by men who wanted to know where Jackson. Hartwell had hidden the documents. He never told them. He died protecting the truth about what was done to our people. She holds up a photograph, the same daguerreotype Claire saw, showing Jackson and Three Rivers standing together. These men were partners. They believed justice mattered more than safety. They were right, and we're going to finish what they started. Rosa Ortega speaks with quiet intensity. My family lost everything because federal officials destroyed our legal documents and called us liars when we protested. My great-great-grandmother watched her husband be murdered for trying to defend our land. She fled to Mexico with nothing, raised her children in poverty. And every generation after that grew up knowing we've been robbed, but having no way to prove it. She looks directly at the cameras. Now we have proof. Jackson Hartwell kept our grant documents safe. He documented exactly how we were defrauded, and we're going to use that documentation to get justice, not just for our family, but for every family whose land was stolen through fraud. Then Claire steps forward. She's still not comfortable with public speaking, but the story she's telling isn't really hers. It belongs to everyone who's been wronged by powerful people and told there's nothing they can do about it. 3 weeks ago, I was homeless, she begins. I owned nothing. I had no power, no influence, no voice. When I inherited this trading post, I could have sold it and walked away. Robert Vance offered me more money than I'd ever imagined having. All I had to do was stay quiet about what I'd found. She looks around at the crowd. But staying quiet means nothing changes. It means powerful people keep getting away with crimes. It means the people they hurt never get justice. My great-great-grandfather was offered the same choice: stay quiet and live comfortably, or speak up and lose everything. He chose silence. My great-uncle chose silence. I'm choosing to speak. A reporter calls out, But Ms. Donovan, you stand to gain $150 million from the certificate. How is that different from Mr. Vance's development profits? Because that money was intended for exactly this purpose, Claire responds. It was paid to Jackson Hartwell to fund legal advocacy for stolen land. I'm using it exactly as intended, hiring lawyers, funding research, supporting the families whose land was taken. If there's money left after all the legal claims are settled, I'll donate it to organizations fighting for justice. Another reporter. Are you say you won't keep any of it? Claire pauses. She hasn't actually decided that. The money could transform her life, give her security she's never had. But standing here, looking at Marie and Rosa, and all the people whose families lost everything, keeping $150 million for herself suddenly feels obscene. I'll keep enough to live on, she says slowly. Enough to buy a modest home, have stability. The rest goes to justice. That's what Jackson intended. She can see Sarah's approving nod, Rosa's surprised gratitude. And she knows she's just made a decision that will define the rest of her life. After the press conference, Vance's attorneys immediately hold their own media availability. They argue the documents are authentic but legally irrelevant. Too much time has passed. Current property owners have rights that must be protected. The economic disruption would be catastrophic. This is legal extortion, one attorney declares. Ms. Donovan and her allies are threatening the entire Oregon economy unless they receive massive payments. That's not justice. That's blackmail. The battle lines are drawn. And that night, the death threats start. Claire's phone begins receiving messages. Some are crude and anonymous. You're destroying people's lives. Watch your back. Others are more specific. We know where you sleep. We know you're alone on that mountain. Accidents happen. Marcus reports him to law enforcement. But there's little police can do about anonymous threats. He increases security protocols, varies their routines, keeps Ranger close as an early warning system. This is what they want, Marcus tells her. They want you scared enough to drop the claims. Don't give them that satisfaction. But 3 days later, someone fires shots at the trading post. Marcus and Claire are inside, photographing some of the less critical documents, when bullets punch through the wooden walls. They drop immediately, Marcus shielding Claire with his body, Ranger barking furiously. 3 shots. Then the sound of a vehicle driving away rapidly. They're unharmed. The shots were clearly meant to intimidate rather than kill, fire high into the walls rather than at human level. But the message is clear. We can reach you. We can hurt you. Tribal police respond within 20 minutes. But the shooter is long gone. They find shell casings from a high-powered rifle, tire tracks that match thousands of vehicles in the region, and nothing that could be traced to a specific person. Sarah calls an emergency meeting. This changes everything. We can't have you staying on the property. It's too isolated, too vulnerable. If I leave, they win, Claire argues. If you stay and get killed, they definitely win. Claire, you need to accept protective custody. Move to the reservation where there's security, where you're not alone on a mountain. Claire looks around a trading post, this building her great-great-grandfather built, where he documented crimes and tried to fight for justice. The place that's become her home, the first real home she's had since she lost everything. What about the documents? Already secured in tribal storage. Copies exist in multiple locations. The originals are protected, but you're not. And you're more important than this building. Marie agrees. Jackson died protecting this place. Theodore sealed it to keep it safe. But both of them would tell you that your life matters more than wood and nails. Come to the reservation. Let us protect you. Claire agrees reluctantly. That night, she packs a few belongings she's accumulated. Ranger's food and water bowl, the clothes Patricia bought her, Uncle Theo's letter that started everything. Marcus loads him into his Jeep, while tribal police stand guard. As they drive away, Claire watches the trading post disappear into the forest. It feels like retreat, like giving up. But Marcus reminds her, strategic withdrawal isn't defeat. You're regrouping, not surrendering. The house on the Warm Springs Reservation is small but comfortable, a guest residence the tribe uses for visiting dignitaries and legal consultants. It has electricity, running water, internet. After weeks in a cabin with minimal amenities, it feels almost decadent, but it also feels like captivity. Claire is used to space, to the forest, to privacy. Here, there are always people nearby. Tribal police doing security patrols, community members bringing food, reporters trying to get interviews. She's safe, but she's not free. 3 days after the shooting, Sarah calls with news. Federal judge has scheduled a preliminary hearing. Both claims, tribal treaty violations and Ortega land grants, will be reviewed together. The judge wants to determine if there's sufficient evidence to proceed to full trial. When? 2 weeks. Portland Federal Courthouse. You'll need to testify about finding the documents. Dr. Chin will present authentication evidence. We'll have tribal historians and the Ortega family. And Sarah pauses. Vance and his attorneys will present their defense. They're bringing property owners, economic experts, everyone they can find to argue these claims should be dismissed. Can we win? At the preliminary hearing? Probably. The documents are authentic and the fraud is proven. But winning the preliminary just means we proceed to full trial. That's when it gets really difficult. Establishing legal remedies, determining compensation, dealing with current property owners' rights. That could take years. Years. Claire thinks about living like this for years. Under protection, constantly threatened, her life consumed by legal battles. But what's the alternative? Give up? Let everything Jackson and Three Rivers fought for be buried again? The night before the hearing, Claire can't sleep. She sits on the guest house porch with Ranger, watching stars emerge over the reservation. The dog has been agitated since the shooting, more protective than usual, unwilling to let her out of his sight. We did the right thing, she tells him. Didn't we? Ranger leans against her, his warmth solid and reassuring. And Claire realizes something. She's asking the wrong question. It's not about whether she did the right thing. She knows she did. The question is whether she can see it through, whether she's strong enough to finish what Jackson started. She thinks about the months of homelessness, the shelters where she felt invisible and vulnerable, the soup kitchen lines where people looked through her, the constant fear where she'd sleep, whether she'd eat, if she'd survive another day. She survived that. She can survive this. The federal courthouse in Portland is massive and intimidating, all marble and authority. Claire walks in flanked by Sarah and Patricia. Marcus a few steps behind, scanning the crowd for threats. Reporters line the hallway, cameras flashing. Protesters on both sides, some carrying signs supporting the land claims, honor the treaties. Justice delayed is justice denied. Others opposing them, protect property rights. Don't steal our land. Robert Vance is already inside the courtroom, surrounded by his legal team. He watches Claire enter, his expression unreadable. The judge is a woman in her 60s named Margaret Chen. No relation to Dr. Chen, but Claire hopes the coincidence is auspicious. Judge Chen has a reputation for fairness and for not tolerating nonsense from either side. This is a preliminary hearing. Judge Chen begins to determine if the claims presented by the Warm Springs Confederated Tribes and the Ortega family have sufficient evidentiary basis to proceed to trial. This is not a trial on the merits. I'm only determining if there's enough evidence to warrant further legal proceedings. Sarah presents first. She walks through the documents methodically. The original treaty with correct boundaries, the alternate treaty showing how boundaries were changed, the letters proving federal surveyors knowingly falsified maps. The evidence shows systematic fraud, Sarah argues. Federal officials deliberately violated treaty obligations, stole land through falsified surveys, and destroyed evidence to cover their crimes. The Warm Springs tribes never legally ceded 11.4 million acres. That land was stolen. Vance's attorney, a man named Richard Steele, counters. The alleged fraud occurred 150 years ago. Every individual involved is dead. Current property owners purchased land legally, paid taxes on it, built lives around it. The doctrine of laches prevents claims based on unreasonable delay. The tribes had 150 years to bring these claims. They can't suddenly appear with documents and expect to overturn a century and a half of settled property law. They couldn't bring claims without evidence, Sarah responds. The evidence was deliberately hidden and suppressed. Jackson Hartwell tried to expose the fraud in the 1880s and was threatened into silence. Theodore Hartwell discovered the documents in 1984 and was intimidated into sealing the building. The delay isn't the tribe's fault. It's the result of ongoing efforts to suppress the truth. Judge Chen asks pointed questions. How was the evidence authenticated? Are there chain of custody issues? Could the documents have been altered or forged? Dr. Chen testified for an hour, explaining the authentication process in detail. Elena Martinez presents the scientific analysis of paper and ink. Their testimony is careful, thorough, unassailable. Then Carmen Reyes presents the Ortega family's claim. The Spanish land grant is even more straightforward. It's an official document bearing valid seals, granting specific territory to the Ortega family. The letters prove federal officials deliberately destroyed the family's copies and lied about the grant's existence. This is textbook fraud, Carmen argues. A family held legal title to land. Government officials destroyed the evidence of that title. When the family protested, those officials murdered the patriarch and forced the family to flee. The land was then sold to private interests. None of those transactions were legal because the underlying seizure was criminal. Steele argues that Spanish land grants are complex, that boundaries were often unclear, that the U.S. government established a formal process for validating grants and the Ortega family never used it. Because they were told their grant documents were fake and they had no proof. Carmen counters. They tried to use the validation process. They were rejected through fraud. That fraud has now been proven. The hearing lasts 3 days. Property owners testify about their family's long history with the land, about improvements made over generations, about the unfairness of suddenly losing everything. Economic experts warn of catastrophic consequences if the claims succeed. Property values crashing, businesses closing, communities destroyed. It's compelling testimony. And Claire can see Judge Shin taking it seriously. But on the third day, Marie Three Rivers testifies. She brings a daguerreotype of Jackson Hartwell and Three Rivers. She brings her great-great-grandfather's belongings, items he died protecting. My ancestor was murdered for trying to preserve evidence of fraud. Marie says quietly, he could have stayed silent. He could have accepted that powerful people always win. Instead, he fought, and he died fighting. I won't dishonor his sacrifice by giving up now just because it's inconvenient for current property owners. Rosa Ortega testifies about her family's history. 5 generations of being called liars. 5 generations of poverty in Mexico, while others profited from stolen land. We lost everything. Rosa says, her voice breaking, not because we did anything wrong, not because of market forces or bad luck, because government officials committed crimes and got away with it. And now, when we finally have proof, we're told it's too late, that the crimes were so successful that they can't be undone. And finally, Claire testifies. She tells the story simply. Finding the trading post, the cash beneath the floorboards, Ranger leading her to the second hiding place, Uncle Theo's letter explaining his fear, the choice she faced. I could have taken the money, she says. I could have sold the property, walked away with $500,000. After 8 months of homelessness, that would have changed my life. But I kept thinking about my great-great-grandfather, documenting these crimes at great personal risk, about Three Rivers, dying to protect evidence, about the Ortega family, losing everything and being called liars. She looks at Judge Shin directly. Justice delayed is still justice. Yes, it's been 150 years. Yes, current property owners will be affected. But the fraud happened. The land was stolen. And if we say it's been too long, if we say the fraud was so successful that it can't be challenged, then we're saying powerful people can commit any crime as long as they get away with it long enough. That's not law. That's just letting the strong rob the weak with impunity. Judge Chin recesses to consider the evidence. Section 8. The victory, resolution, achieved. 3 weeks pass. 3 weeks of waiting, of living under protection, of watching the media debate the case endlessly. Claire feels suspended, unable to move forward, unable to return to her old life. Then Sarah calls. Judge Chin issued her ruling. You need to sit down. Claire sits, Ranger immediately pressing against her legs. What did she decide? She's allowing both claims to proceed to trial. She found sufficient evidence of fraud to overcome the Latch's defense. The documents are authentic. The crimes are proven. Now we argue remedies. Claire's breath catches. We won. The preliminary hearing, yes, but it gets complicated. Judge Shin is ordering mediation before trial. She wants all parties to attempt settlement rather than spending years in court. And she appointed a special master to oversee negotiations, a retired federal judge with expertise in tribal law and historical property disputes. What does that mean? It means we have leverage. Vance and the property owners can't just dismiss the claims. They have to negotiate seriously. But it also means we need to be realistic about what remedies are actually achievable. Full return of all land is probably impossible, but compensation, partial return of undeveloped land, revenue sharing, those are all on the table. The mediation begins 2 weeks later. It's held in a conference center in Portland, with representatives from every interested party. The Warm Springs tribes, the Ortega family, Robert Vance and his development company, timber companies that own land covered by the claims, the Oregon state government, and individual property owners who've organized into a coalition. The special master, a retired judge named Harold Weinstein, establishes ground rules. We're not here to relitigate history. The fraud is proven. The question is what we do about it now. I want proposals from each side. What would constitute adequate remedy? What's negotiable and what isn't? The Tribal Council presents first. They want 3 things: official acknowledgement of treaty violations, return of sacred sites and undeveloped land, and establishment of a trust fund for economic development paid by those who profited from the stolen land. We're not asking to displace families from their homes, Joseph Three Rivers clarifies, residential properties can be compensated at fair market value, but land that's still wilderness, that has sacred significance, that should be returned. And commercial operations, mining, timber, development, those need to pay restitution. The Ortega family's proposal is similar. We want acknowledgement of what was done. Rosa says, we want return of undeveloped portions of our grant land. And for the developed portions, we want fair compensation plus revenue sharing going forward. The property owners' coalition pushes back. These remedies would cost billions. Many of our families can't afford to buy out our land at current market value. We'd be forced to leave homes we've owned for generations. Then perhaps the state and federal governments should bear that cost, Carmen Reyes responds. They're the ones who committed fraud. They're the ones who created this situation. Current owners bought in good faith, but they bought stolen property. Someone has to pay for that. Why should it be the victims? Robert Vance's attorney argues the economic impact will be catastrophic. Mr. Vance's company alone has $2 billion in projected revenue from development in the affected areas. If these claims succeed, that revenue disappears. That's thousands of jobs lost, communities destroyed. Mr. Vance can develop elsewhere. Sarah says coolly. He just can't profit from development on stolen land. The negotiations are brutal. Every day, different parties present proposals and counterproposals. The numbers are staggering. Estimates of total land value range from $15 billion to $30 billion, depending on how it's calculated. Claire mostly observes, overwhelmed by the complexity. But during breaks, property owners approach her directly. Some are angry, accusing her of destroying their lives. Others are more sympathetic. An older woman named Beth Morrison pulls Claire aside one afternoon. My family has owned our ranch for 4 generations. It's all we have. If we're forced to sell at market value, the taxes alone will bankrupt us. Where are we supposed to go? Claire doesn't have a good answer. Beth Morrison isn't a villain. She's just someone who trusted that the land she inherited was rightfully hers. I'm sorry, Claire says inadequately. I didn't want this to hurt innocent people. But the land was stolen. That's not my fault or yours. It's the fault of people who committed fraud 150 years ago. Someone has to pay for correcting that fraud. The question is who? And you think it should be me? People like me who thought we own our land legally? I think it should be the government that committed the fraud, the corporations that profited most, not individual families. But I don't control the negotiations. Beth walks away unsatisfied. And Claire understands there's no perfect solution. Someone will be hurt by any remedy. The question is whether the hurt is distributed fairly. After 6 weeks of mediation, Special Master Weinstein proposes a settlement framework for the Warm Springs tribes. Official acknowledgement by federal and state governments of treaty violations return of 400,000 acres of undeveloped land, about 3.5% of the stolen territory, $8 billion trust fund for economic development, paid over 20 years by federal and state governments plus timber and mining companies that profited from the land revenue sharing agreements for commercial development on claimed territory that remains in private hands. For the Ortega family, official acknowledgement of fraud and murder of family patriarch return of 50,000 acres of undeveloped portions of the original grant, $2 billion compensation fund for developed portions, paid by state government and current commercial property owners' revenue, sharing agreements for timber and mineral extraction on grant lands. For current property owners, residential properties under 100 acres remain with current owners. No displacement compensation fund established to help small property owners buy out their land at fair market value if they choose to sell clear title guarantee for properties not subject to return provisions. For Robert Vance and major commercial interests, mining and development permits on claimed lands revoke companies that profited significantly from development on stolen land contribute to compensation funds proportional to historical profits. Future development requires consultation with tribes and revenue-sharing agreements. The total cost, approximately $10 billion, split among federal government 40%, state government 30%, and commercial interests that profited most 30%. It's not full justice. The tribes are getting back less than 4% of their stolen land. The Ortega family is getting back 25% of their grant. Many people who profited from a fraud will never pay consequences. But it's acknowledgement. It's restitution. It's more than anyone thought possible 3 months ago. Claire watches as the various parties review the proposal. Robert Vance's expression is dark. His mining development plans are destroyed. His company will pay hundreds of millions into the compensation funds. But his attorneys are clearly advising him to accept. The alternative is years of litigation with no guarantee he'd do better. Sarah and the tribal council confer privately. Then Marie addresses the mediator. We accept. It's not everything we deserve, but it's more than we've ever gotten. And it's acknowledgement that what was done was wrong. Rosa Ortega cries as she signs the agreement. My great-great-grandmother died believing we'd always be called liars. Now the government is officially admitting she was right. That matters more than the money. After everyone signs, Special Master Weinstein addresses the room. This is unprecedented. I've mediated hundreds of cases. I've never seen anything like this. Claims based on 150-year-old fraud, affecting billions in property value, resolved through negotiation rather than decades of litigation. You should all be proud of what you've accomplished here. But Claire feels oddly empty. They won. They actually won. And yet, it doesn't feel like the triumphant moment she'd imagined. Patricia finds her afterward. You look disappointed. I don't know what I feel. We got justice. Partial justice. Anyway, but it costs so much. The death threats, the shooting, living under protection for months. And even now, thousands of people hate me for what we did. Justice always costs something, Patricia says gently. That's why most people don't fight for it. You did. You paid the price. And you changed history. That night, back at the reservation guest house, Claire finally allows herself to cry. Ranger presses close, sensing her emotional release. All the fear and stress and uncertainty of the past 3 months pours out. When she's done, she feels lighter, clearer. They won. And whatever comes next, she faced a fight and survived.